Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Happy Friday and welcome to Winnipeg Sports Talk. We got a busy one today. Lots to chew on after last night's overtime win over the Edmonton Oilers. Ken Wiebe, Wiebe's World himself, will be first up today, coming up at the bottom of the hour for the latest on the Winnipeg Jets. And we'll talk about a bunch of the big stories in the NHL coming out of the GM meetings, the playoff races, and more with EJ Hradek from NHL Network HQ out in New Jersey. Of course, it is Friday. That means we'll have a marble race, but not before we hit the NFL notebook with Lee Hacksaw Hamilton. And I'm sure Hacksaw will have some thoughts on March Madness and everything else going on. But this show, as usual, will be dominated at this time of the year by the latest with the Winnipeg Jets, who get to 100 points on the season last night with their win over the Edmonton Oilers, and now have a 10-point lead over the Dallas Stars with 12 games remaining on their schedule. Dallas losing in the extra frame, I believe a shootout last night to the Tampa Bay Lightning. So the Jets do make up a point on Dallas, and the lead is 10, double digits, going into the final dozen games. Of course, the Jets off today, will practice tomorrow, and then host the Buffalo Sabres on Sunday afternoon. And then it's a game that I think a lot of people have had circled on the calendars for a while. Alex Ovechkin chasing history, scored again last night to get to 888. He and the Washington Capitals will be here. And if you recall, it was about a month and a half ago or so when the Jets were in Washington for that Saturday night game that was the battle of the top two teams in the league. Guess what? They're still there. There are two teams in triple digits. They're both at 100 points. It's Washington. It's Winnipeg. They'll play here on Tuesday. But a lot to dive into from last night's game. From my perspective, this was not an A performance by the Winnipeg Jets. Listen, the Oilers didn't have Leon Draisaitl and then lost Connor McDavid later on the game. And to be honest, that's the big story of what happened last night. And didn't love the way the Jets played, to be honest, in the third period. I'll give Edmonton a lot of credit, though. They battled really hard. They did not quit. I mean, without their top two players, I mean, you want to talk about a built-in excuse. It was there. But, man, Zach Hyman, so much respect for him and the player that he is. He's always in and around the net. He picked up a rebound after Brandon Tanev put the Jets ahead 3-2. And the game went to overtime. But as we've said all year long, and maybe this wouldn't be the case if Draisaitl and McDavid were in the lineup at that point, or at least available to the club in 3-on-3 OT. But like I say to my friends, when we're talking about, at least the team get a point. If the Jets get one, they're usually getting two. They're now 9-3 in overtime, 1-1 in the shootout. So 10 of 14 in games that have gone to the extra frame this year. And, if you assume that, 500 would be the norm, that's 5 extra points. And that's 5 very important points in the standings that the Winnipeg Jets have right now. But we'll chop this all up with Remis. We'll get Ken's thoughts about the game as well, and a look ahead to this upcoming homestand for the Jets, which again begins Sunday afternoon with the Sabres, who Sabres. I'm not sure if you caught the Sabres last night, folks, but they were down 3-2 late in the game. Delayed penalty. They're about to get a 6-on-4. They pass it back to the blue line, miss the defenseman. It bounces off the boards and goes into their own net. Maybe the most quintessential Sabres moment of the entire season. They're in Minnesota tomorrow afternoon, then here on Sunday. But let's get Remis in here and chop it up. Do want to thank all the sponsors that make the program happen each and every day. Of course, Coolbet Canada, Princess Auto, Canadian Club, St. Vital Dental Center, Rowley's Transfer, Manitoba Battery, Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge, Wallace & Wallace, F Apparel, fansfirst.ca, Little Brown Jug, Boston Pizza, Royal Sports, the Winnipeg Jets, and we will get to a why not question of the day for Not Autocorp over at Waverly and McGillivray. All right, let's get Michael Remis here. I will welcome everybody in chat. And right off the bat, I'd love to thank everybody that joined us last night at Boston Pizza Garden City. Packed the place again. Every table reserved. A really awesome crowd. So many regulars from the chat came out, which was great to see everybody. And they all left happy after the Jets got a big 2 points. Had some nice winners. And Alex Pereira won a $50 gift card. Buddy Stetsky had the Cole Perfetti pick a player. He was the first winner on a Jet goal last night. So it was great to see everybody. Appreciate Tanner and the Little Brown Jug crew coming out and being a big part of yesterday's event. And then, of course, the Boston Pizza staff always takes great care of us and our people. So thanks to everyone that was there. It was great to see you and Connor last night, Reem. We had Zolt and Balls with us too. It was a heck of a good time, and always better when we get together and continue our streak. I think we can legitimately say we're now 7-0 this year as WST groups, 5 in person at the arena, and now 2-0 with our LBJ Boston Pizza watch parties.
Yeah, it was awesome to be out there. A great crowd at Boston Pizza. Great place to watch a game. I love the pickup player. Shout out to there were like 2 Brandon Tanevs out there too when he scored, but no Kyle Connor. So I guess it evened out. And shout out to Alex who had Josh Morrissey. He had Pionk at our first watch party too. So he was the big winner. Last time he pulled his name too out of the hat for everyone who ordered Little Brown Jug. So great event. It was so awesome to see. We're so thankful that we have people that listen to us here and are come out to all these events. And we have the watch. We'll be in person at the game next Friday, and we were looking at tickets on the Jets website, and that is sold out now in our section there. So real exciting stuff. And again, we're so appreciative of Boston Pizza, Little Brown Jug for their continued sponsorship and everyone who listens and comes out to all these events. It's awesome.
Yeah, and speaking of our sponsor, got to give a shout out to Greg and Gerald from Royal. They came out as well, brought some dudes, and enjoyed the game last night. So a few of our longest sponsors all getting together for what was a great night with so many of our friends from the Winnipeg Sports Talk community. We'll have to do this again some point soon, so stay tuned for that. But listen, it was the game. I wasn't sure we were all going to be leaving happy, to be honest, the way things started yesterday, Reem. And, the Oilers got up early in a game that, the Jets were, Scott Arniel, and we'll hear from the coach in a minute, described it as a little sloppy. The team was playing from behind. But, once again, Dylan Sandberg, but Cole Perfetti, the roomies, Big Jimmy and Little Jimmy getting in on it. And Perfetti, we've talked a lot about just the improvement in his game, his battle level, winning battles. He's also realizing that, there's a lot of great plays that he has in his toolkit, if you will, passes and things on the perimeter. Go to the net. That's where you score goals. And there was Perfetti pouncing on a rebound to get them back even after Jeff Skinner, of all people, had put them up. And then the Oilers scored kind of a goal that certainly the Jets didn't like, and a very rare unsuccessful challenge from the Winnipeg coaching staff. But in a way, it ended up paying them back, Remis, because, of course, they're down 2-1, then having to kill a penalty. But Nino Niederreiter, who served the penalty, got out, got the pass, set up Josh Morrissey on an absolutely beautiful play to tie that game and get it back to even before Brandon Tanev, who I think we can say already one of the most popular Jets, just being back for a couple weeks, put the team up in the third period before the Oilers, without McDavid and without Draisaitl, I thought really battled hard to get back in the game and get that one to overtime.
Yeah, that game was a bit of a grinder of a game, Huss, and the Jets were kind of chasing it for a while, as you mentioned. Jeff Skinner getting them on the board early, and Cole Perfetti just finds himself always in the right spot. That was like, if that goal happened when I was playing like on Xbox, I'd be like, what is this? what is this crap? The puck just went right to Cole Perfetti's stick off a rebound. It was crazy how it worked out so perfectly. Samberg with the shot connecting with Perfetti again. And yeah, Skinner with the second goal. You know, I didn't mind the challenge on that one. Scott O'Neill will play the clip. I thought Hyman went into the crease on his own, interfered with Hellebuck's stick, and he wasn't able to get it set. Now, Miller did shove him, but what is he supposed to do when Hyman goes in there on his own, starts interfering with the goalie? So I didn't mind the challenge. We were like, oh, they're in a tough spot here now. Down, what is it? Down 3-2, and down 2-1, and they've got to kill a penalty against this Oilers power play, even without Draisaitl. Pretty good, but they managed to kill it off. Shout out to the penalty kill, which was perfect, 2 for 2 last night, and Josh Morrissey taps one in from a nice pass from Nino Niederreiter. So you mentioned Tanev going in the net, and in overtime, the Jets have been pretty good this year. Maybe some concerns. The power play, Huss, been trending down. They had a 65-second 5-on-3. Couldn't really get much. 0 for 4 last night, and now 1 for 16 over the last 6 games. So, look, you got the 2 points. I mean, some people who don't like the Jets are like, well, you didn't go up against McDavid and Draisaitl. It's not the real Oilers. Well, what are they supposed to do? Got to play who's in front of you. Yeah. They managed to get the 2 points. And I think it was a pretty successful road trip. They return home and face Buffalo here Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, listen, right now, game 70 of the regular season against a non-full Oiler lineup is not going to be the bar of which the Winnipeg Jets are judged. There's 2 bars. They'll be judged by an 82-game regular season, of which they've been the best team in the league, or at least they, along with Washington, have been clearly the best teams in the league all season long. And you can look at their huge leads in their respective conferences as evidence of that. And then they'll be judged in the playoffs. And right now, it is up to the Winnipeg Jets to finish the job. They started that with that huge win against Dallas last Friday here in Winnipeg to put them 11 points up. And now we get through another week and more games put in the rearview mirror, and the Jets have a 10-point lead atop the division and atop the Western Conference. And the bottom line is they want to be first. They want to have home ice throughout the Western Conference playoffs, and they want to get the 8th seed and the second wild card in the first round, which will leave Dallas and Colorado to beat the hell out of each other for 2 weeks. And, and then presumably you're able to get through what even still will be a tough first round matchup, although it won't be against a team at the quality of Colorado or Dallas. See whether you can win the division, make it through, and get to the conference finals. So first things first, finish first. 2 points last night was big, and the Winnipeg Jets, as Scott O'Neill said, will certainly take it. Why don't we hear from a little bit of the coach right now? He spoke after the game, a 4-3 overtime win on an absolutely brilliant Kyle Connor OT winner. Here's what Scott O'Neill had to say about the win and getting back home for the weekend and on Sunday.
It was on our side. I wouldn't want to speak for their coach. It was a little sloppy. I think both teams turned pucks over, but at the end of the day, last game of the road trip, we did what we had to do. We got the lead. Would really like to see us lock that down, but obviously a big goal in overtime.
Yeah, and that goal doesn't happen, I guess, if Connor Hellebuck doesn't make that save a few seconds earlier, right?
Yeah, we had some looks there with our power play late in the game. Obviously, they had to make the goalie switch, but then with Helly there, he had to make a big one there, certainly with that one off the mask. And it's timely. He's the type of guy that throws those timely saves in there.
Yeah, listen, you just need to look at the shots of the game. Neither goaltender was particularly busy. Stuart Skinner saw 16 shots. Pickard, who had to go in for the final 5 minutes or so, saw 4. And Hellebuck, I guess, including OT, had 24 against him. But listen, got the win, made a couple big saves down the stretch when they needed it. But this was not, I don't think this was an A Connor Hellebuck game. I don't think it was an A Winnipeg Jets game. Far from it, to be frank. But good teams find ways to win. They did it last night. This won't be the one that they'll be looking back going, remember Game 70 when they were able to beat the Oilers undermanned in overtime? No, but as we mentioned, the points all count. Speaking of Connor Hellebuck, and we'll talk about this goaltending challenge in just a minute. Nice milestone for Helly last night, Remo, while on a night that the Jets become the first team in the West to get to 100 points on the same night that Washington hit 100 points. Hellebuck wins his 40th game of the season. Now, 40 wins and only 10 losses in regulation on the year for the heavy favorite for the Vezina Trophy.
Yeah, and he's just strengthening his case more and more. I mean, 40 wins, that's more wins than a couple other teams. So you look at, goals against, leading, save percentage, leading, shutouts, leading. I mean, they're going to have to rename the Vezina the Hellebuck pretty soon as he keeps this up over the next couple of years. I mean, this is year one of this contract. He's already got 2 Vezinas, working on number 3. Pretty incredible stuff. 40 wins, only 10 losses, 3 in overtime. Pretty good record.
Well, listen, it's unbelievable, but I will say this: I think Tuesday against the Canucks and last night against the Oilers was not a game Hellebuck, and I think coming back home with the 2 days off, I would bet the house that Eric Comrie gets the start on Sunday afternoon. So it'll be nice for Helly to get a few days away, some important rest, and get ready for a real marquee game in the National Hockey League between the best in the West and the best in the East all season, the Winnipeg Jets and the Washington Capitals on Tuesday. Let's just get to a little bit more from our Neil. We'll talk about this with Ken. This was Mike asking Arnie about the thought process that went into the coach's challenge and their thoughts on not getting that call.
At that point in the game, it's 2-1, and obviously you're risking going shorthanded. Were you certain of that, or I imagine they ruled Miller must have pushed.
Yeah, that's not what we were. That's not what we were arguing about. We were arguing about Helly's stick. We were arguing about his stick. It wasn't the fact of that. It was Helly's stick that was impeded by a skate from the Edmonton player, and you know what, they decided that it wasn't, but that was what we were after. We just felt he was in the blue paint, and he didn't allow Helly to get his stick back underneath, and obviously in front of him.
All right, so there's our Neil's thoughts on the challenge. Now it didn't go their way. They had to kill a penalty, and then as we outlined, Nino Niederreiter comes out of the box. Beautiful pass to Josh Morrissey. The Jets are right back tied up at 2-2. Here's what he had to say about the PK, and then a quick goal right after the penalty expired.
Yeah, I thought our penalty kill was really good. I thought we did a lot of really good things. We've given up a couple lately. Both teams' penalty kills were real strong tonight. But I thought our group, they really hunkered down on that off of that call. They certainly can change the game if you go down 3-1. But then to get one right away off of it, Josh going the other way, that was big.
What's the level of concern with the power play, or is there any real?
You know what? There's some. Sometimes for them, it just comes down to detail. Get some looks. They had a couple. KC would you have 7 shots tonight, but they'll find it. When it's just part of sticking with it. If they're working on the details and the compete part, they'll spend time in that in the rink, and sooner or later it'll turn for us.
All right, Scott Arniel from last night's game. One thing to note. Just on the blue line, the ice time, Josh Morrissey ended up playing 27 and a half minutes. Hayden Fleury had a team low 10:40, while Colin Miller played 13:15. Shen played 17 and a half, and Sandberg 23:30, Dylan DeMello 22:45. Mike just asked about, was he running a short bench with the defenseman, and here's what Arnie had to say about that.
I think the pairs kind of got mixed up because of the penalties. They kind of got out of the gate there. Just there was some long shifts too. We got stuck out in some long shifts, so just trying to make sure we had fresh guys out there.
All right, so there's the coach. We'll hear a little bit from Kyle Connor later on today, and of course Brandon Tanev, who was the hero, but we got Kenny lined up, so we'll bring him on in just a moment. After we thank our friends at Rolly's Transfer for their great support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. Folks, if you got a move coming up in spring or summer, why don't you leave it to Rolly's to do the dirty work for you? Family owned and operated for over 60 years. The most trusted name in moving, with a great rate waiting for you, and the white glove treatment to all your property and possessions that Rolly's is famous for. Head over to Rolly's.com, click on request an estimate, put in the promo code WST for a special discount on moving services and moving supplies, and let them know when and where you are moving and what needs to be moved. And the friendly staff at Rolly's will turn it around quickly, get you a great quote, and get you locked in for that white glove treatment that Rolly's is famous for. For your next move, make it Rolly's Transfer. Family owned and operated for over 60 years right here in Winnipeg. Find out more, request an estimate today over at Rolly's.com. All right, well, spring is just around the corner, although, man, it does not feel that way today. But there's all sorts of spring cleaning that you should probably be getting after. And one of those things is for your teeth. And our pal Dr. Terry and the gang at St. Vital Dental Center would love to see you for a spring cleaning of the oral kind. And that's why you should check out everything that St. Vital Dental Center has offered. They've been serving generations of Winnipeggers in the St. Vital area, now with the beautiful new office at 167 St. Anne's with free parking right in the back and full service dental care from 6 months to 99 plus with everything that you may need when it comes to dental services, including dental implants, which you can get more information at their website right now. Find out more on St. Vital Dental Center at stvitaldental.ca. If you are popping there on a Friday afternoon, make sure you tell them to throw on the marble race. Half the offices probably entered in it as well. Dr. Terry, top 10 performance last week. We'll see how he does today. Shout out to Donnie and the gang at Manitoba Battery as well. Again, it's feeling sort of wintry right now. If you've got car or truck issues with that battery, pop by Manitoba Battery's 2 locations for a free battery test. And if you need a new one, you'll get the best price in town and quick and easy, amazing customer service to get that new one in. The bottom line is, when it comes to batteries for your car, your truck, or literally anything, Manitoba Battery is where you can shop local and get the best prices in town, beating the pants off the big box stores, and the best service too, because they'll deliver it to you for free anywhere inside the perimeter of Winnipeg with any purchase over $60. It's just that easy. In store, give them a call or order online at manitobabattery.com, your local option for the best in batteries at the lowest prices around. And, hey, Kenny's coming up right now, but the weekend is here. If you're popping by your local Manitoba liquor marts, you'll notice that all that American stuff isn't on the shelves anymore, but Canadian Club still is. The best in Canadian whiskey since 1848. The standard when it comes to Canadian whiskey is waiting for you. So make sure to keep your eyes out for that Canadian Club display with Canadian Club Original, Canadian Club 100% Rye, Canadian Club Classic, and of course, coming for spring and summer, CC and ginger ale and premixed cocktails, not just at your local liquor marts, but also at your beer vendor as well. Cheers to the weekend, and make it cheers with Canada's finest Canadian Club. All right, let's welcome in Ken Wiebe, who I'm sure has a very busy slate ahead of him. Doesn't look like he's here north of the border right now. Ken, what's going on? How are you?
Andrew, good afternoon. Cheers to the weekend indeed. Greetings from sunny Maricopa. Just sneaking in a little golf before the stretch run here.
You didn't get that memo. You didn't get that memo that we're in a trade war with the States and we're not supposed to be there supporting them anymore.
I was already booked, Huss. Apologies there. So happy to report the tour is in session. Good news all around there. Going to be going to do some scouting for our pal Raj. Just about to go see the Kansas City Royals playing the Athletics. I'm not sure what we're calling them. Are we calling them Sacramento? Or are we calling them Oakland? I'm not really sure. What I'm sure about is that I'll be seeing Cole Reagan's on the bump here in about just over an hour's time. So Yes, greetings. Interesting week for the Jetsons for sure. I think there was quite a bit of strong play mixed in with a bit of a furball defensively against the Canucks, but overall they're at the point of the season where the finish line in the regular season is near, and now it'll all be about sharpening things up and taking care of a little bit of the cleanup duties when it comes to maybe a little bit of the defensive zone details that have been definitely lacking against the Canucks, and a couple hiccups maybe against the Oilers, but overall I think the Jets are still playing mostly well. Huss, it's hard not to for them to be thinking about, they've done an exceptional job, Huss, of staying in the moment, but I think that we're all pretty clear that this is a group that knows that they will be judged when it matters in games 83 and beyond, and I don't think that that's creeping into their game. I just think that it's hard to play at that elite level for as long as they have here without having a couple of hiccups here and there.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, that was a performance, particularly in their own end, that we hadn't seen very many of so far this season. So, I mean, if there's a team that's earned a mulligan or two, I would suggest it is the Jets. But at the same time, you'd like to be trending upwards and playing your best as you get closer to the playoffs. But there's still another month to go. I mean, there's still 12 more games on the schedule. And what the Jets really had to worry about was maintaining their lead in the Central Division. And going back to last Friday with that huge win over the Dallas Stars that ended up putting them up 11 points on Dallas, they've sort of held up their part of the bargain. They've got a 10 points, Ken, with 12 games remaining. Exactly where you want to be, and frankly, an incredible gap that you just don't see very often. And it's the same thing in both. We were kind of looking ahead a little bit to this game against Washington next week, in that both the Caps and the Jets got off to those great starts, never looked back, and now are essentially looking at basically icing the conferences relatively soon and getting ready for playoffs, which is exactly what they want. But last night's game, this was not a performance by the Jets. And listen, I think you could tell from Scott Arniel after the game saying that, hey, you know what? It was a little sloppy at times. Happy we got the win. We came here for 2 points. Now it's time to get back home. And, they have played more games than some of these other teams, and a little bit of extra rest, particularly for Connor Hellebuck, I think this weekend heading in is going to be a good thing. But I mean, just your thoughts on last night's game, because there was some good, there was a little bit of ugly as well. And for a team that, didn't have Draisaitl and McDavid at the end of the game, I think a lot of people maybe expected that one would have been done in regulation. But as I said right off the top of the show, I give what was left of the Oilers lineup a lot of credit for the way they pushed the Winnipeg Jets after Brandon Tanev put them up 3-2.
For sure, Huss. I mean, like I said, I think there were definitely some, breakdowns that the Jets would like to have back for sure in that game, especially the Hyman game-tying goal. But that was more of a, that was a, symptom of the, third period issue. Like the Jets were kind of on their heels for a good chunk of the third. So in a lot of ways, that even though the Jets have defended leads very well this year, that I wouldn't say it seemed inevitable, but that was just a hard-working play by a really smart player that got to the net. Behind two very defensively conscious players in Dylan Samberg and Luke Schenn, right? The Wallman still has to get the shot through; it has to bounce to him. But Hyman was an absolute force in the game, right? I mean, tons of shots on net, all over the place. Really liked his game, especially after McDavid left the contest for the third period. Just a quick update there, Huss. Those guys are not available Saturday. Just saw at Edmonton, and it could be kind of at least a week for both of them. So, I mean, that's definitely a blow for an Edmonton Oilers team trying to chase down the Vegas Golden Knights. But in terms of the Jets, I mean, they had a lot of things that went their way. I mean, you touched on it. I mean, like the Kyle Connor overtime winner is it's vintage Jets, right? I mean, it's you attack your opponent, you create some separation, and one of the best, one of the guys with the best release in the NHL rips a puck past Winnipegger Calvin Pickard, who didn't really have a whole lot of time to get himself warmed up after entering the game with 4:57 to go, with Skinner pulled by the concussion spotter. I mean, overall, I still see a lot of progress for the Jets, and I thought we talked Huss last week and probably the week before that the Adam Lowry line needed to get going. I thought Scott Arniel did a smart thing by breaking them up momentarily. I think he also did a smart thing by putting them back together and getting them out against Connor McDavid's line as often as possible. Nino Niederreiter has not scored in 15 games. That's a fact. But what he did do yesterday was get more involved in the game. He made an incredibly smart pass and a perfect play to Josh Morrissey for the go-ahead goal in the game. Mason Appleton, I thought, was skating better. That line was attacking more on the forecheck. So there's something that went well for the Jets right there. Second line, again, very, they're going to the blue paint. Cole Perfetti up to 15 goals, Huss. So, and the fourth line also buzzing around all night long again. Brandon Tanev scores. And yes, I understand the analytics and that it hasn't been going as smoothly for the top line lately, Huss. We talked about this last week, and I get it. But when the game was on the line, 2/3 of the top line is very involved in the game-winning goal in overtime, right? So I think that there are things that they would like to do better, but at the same time, again, Huss, they've won 4 to 5 games since losing to Carolina. So we have to occasionally remind folks that the standard can't be 82-0, and it's not going to be 11 wins in a row or 8 wins or 7 or whatever the numbers are going to be. It's more about how they're playing and how their game is trending. And I think in a lot of ways, yes, they have to clean up the power play. The 5-on-3 was not good enough under any circumstance. I mean, we understand that Scott Arniel he has very good reason to back a power play, Huss, that has been operating above 30% for 70 games this year. That is an incredible feat in itself. But he also knows that the power play needs to get going. And Huss, I'm not saying it has to be automatic for a 5-on-3, but it's got to be pretty close in terms of at least chance generation. And that hasn't been happening as often for the Jets. And it's not just last night. I think I don't have the numbers in front of me. It's 3 or 4 now where they haven't looked nearly dangerous enough with a 2-man advantage.
There's that it just doesn't seem like they have the urgency. You're looking for the perfect Harlem Globetrotters goal when they've got 5-on-3. And, at times we have seen, depending on what the game is, of them getting the puck to the net quickly and, taking advantage of the extra man or a guy like Gabe Vilardi in front of the net to tap in a rebound. And that wasn't the case right now. I mean, certainly the power play. And listen, I was expecting this to happen at some point. I mean, when you're rolling at a historical number all season long, you are going to see an inevitable return to the mean. However, this power play has been such a big reason why they are where they are, Ken. If the Jets want to do in the playoffs, achieve their goals and anything close to what they've done in the regular season, there's no doubt that we need to see that power play get back up a level, regardless of what we're talking about 5-on-3s, just regularly at the 5-on-4 efficiency.
Yeah, I mean, it's the numbers just aren't good in this stretch, right? I mean, it's 1 for 16, I think, or something along those, right? Yeah, 1 for 16. It was 1 for 12 going into the game, and I think 0 for 4 yesterday. So, yeah, it's something that has to improve for sure. But Huss, it's so interesting, right? So what we were talking about, how the penalty kill needed to be better, and the power play has been, cruising along at this ridiculous rate. Well, now yesterday the penalty kill came up incredibly large after the goalie or the failed coach's challenge, which, again, I totally understand why the Jets went for the challenge. Matt Prefontaine's percentage is incredibly high, and it's funny. I think in some ways, and I'm not in the situation room, but I think that it was kind of like sleight of hand here. Everyone was looking at the body contact on Connor Hellebuyck, and I think that in some ways they might have missed the stick contact by Hyman, which was the initial thing. And yes, Connor Hellebuyck had time to reset, but he didn't have control of his stick because of what happened. And that's what allowed the 5-hole to be open. So I think it was a smart challenge. And I'd be curious to think if the situation room thought that they got it right. And if they do, I mean, I get it. But I do think that it made a lot of sense. But then the Jets getting the kill right after that, Huss, instead of allowing McDavid and company to go up 3-1. And not only that, then Morrissey's goal comes, shortly after the penalty kill is successful. So, yeah, I mean, what we also know, I mean, of course, does an elite level power play help a team in the playoffs? Of course it does. If you more times you win the special teams battle, the more times you put yourself in position to win the game. But there have also been teams like the Boston Bruins and I think St. Louis Blues that won the Stanley Cup without having much of a power play. And I'm not suggesting that the Jets power play is suddenly going to go in the tank. It just, I feel like they're going to get things back on track because of the weaponry they have at their disposal. But I mean, let's look at the Oilers, Huss. They didn't have a good penalty kill last year, but Mark Stewart got them, cooking in the playoffs all the way to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals. So all to say that the large sample of the Jets power play being at 30-ish% through 70 games should suggest that they've earned the benefit of the doubt that they will get things back on track. But at the same time, they have to execute, right? They're not just going to automatically be clicking at 30%. They have to use the principles that allowed them to get to 30% and above in the first place. So, and that will apply to the penalty kill too, right? We've talked about it. Since the arrival of Schenn and Tanev, I think we've seen the Jets take some strides on the penalty kill, and obviously their special teams is going to be an area that they're going to be working on, going into these last 12 games here.
Ken, when we dive into the next 12 games for the Jets, it's pretty clear what they need to do. Win a few more games and lock up first place. Just what are you looking for through these final 12 games? And listen, put yourself in Scott O'Neill's position. Everything that they do needs to be in preparing for game number 83. And whoever is going to be coming to Winnipeg and Canada Life Center, which is a very interesting playoff race, which we can maybe touch on in a minute. They've given themselves a really comfortable lead. I think you may be able to see some guys get a rest for a game or two if they need. Certainly, you're not going to have to grind it out with Hellebuyck night in, night out, and I would be shocked or stunned if he didn't play on Sunday afternoon. But just your thoughts on what they're looking to do over the course of the last 12 games of the season. And bottom line, what will put them in the best position for success come playoff time?
Yeah, I think what we know about the Jets is this, Huss. We know what they look like when they're operating on all cylinders, and it's tough to operate on all cylinders every game. But what we know is that when they're an aggressive team in all three zones, that is when they impose their will on games, right? That means tight checking, like their baseline is their defensive structure. Even though, yes, we know they're still one of the highest scoring teams in the NHL, what has allowed the Jets to be in contention for the President's Trophy is the commitment to defensive zone structure, combined with elite level goaltending. Also, then you toss in an historic power play and the ability to have four lines of depth that can all score. That's their formula. So you're not always going to get full marks and full check marks in all of those boxes, but you need to provide as many template games as possible down the stretch. I'm with you 100%, and I said it on our show last night. Got to be Comrie on Sunday. You don't have the Jets have had two busy stretches, 3 and 4 a couple times in consecutive weeks. You've got a big block of time here for Hellebuyck. Like I said, I don't think he's tired, but I do think it's a good place for him to get a mental reset. Comrie's got to get, if there's 12 left, he's got to get for sure 3 of those starts for me. That would allow Hellebuyck to still be pretty sharp while not, riding the games played number to a level that, whether it's going to be 60, that's going to make it pretty close to Comrie, close to 20 starts, which is what we talked about going into the season. In terms of maybe rest for some players, it's interesting, right? The Jets are going to want to get Neil Pionk back before the regular season ends. Of course, the Jets would prefer to have Neil Pionk playing, but with Pionk being out, it has allowed them to test out a look of Luke Schenn beside Dylan Samberg. Not saying that they're going to switch the pairings, but it's allowed them to have that look. We've seen him take a few shifts with Josh Morrissey. So the Jets are having, Scott O'Neill, the balance for him is wanting to continue with the continuity while also getting a chance to have a test drive of a couple of different looks, just in case those looks are required in a 7-game series or things made, out of necessity, or if things are not going quite as well as planned. So there are some benefits to, being in the situation that they're in for sure. I'm looking for them to be sharp down the stretch. That doesn't mean they need to go 12-0, Huss. Whether they go 12-0 or 6-6, I think is not as relevant. We saw it last year. Jets ended the season on an 8-game winning streak. It didn't carry over. It carried over into game 1. It didn't carry over into the series. So winning streaks not as valuable. Playing up to the standard that they have set for themselves is the biggest thing that the Jets need to do moving forward. There are some big tests left on the schedule for sure. They'll play Vegas one more time. They'll play Edmonton one more time. They'll play Dallas one more time. They'll play Washington one more time. And, with all due respect to the rest of the teams on the schedule. Those are probably, 4 of the teams that you would have circled in terms of if you want to go on a run. Those are probably 4 teams that could be in the line of fire, if you will. So I think they've put themselves in a good place. And as you mentioned, I mean, they have earned the benefit of the doubt, but at the same time, they're going to have to deliver when it matters most. And for the most part this year, they've done a very good job of parking wins and losses. So they haven't really allowed a ton of, poor play to extend for long periods of time. So those are some of the things I'll be looking for. And Sean asked me this last night on the show, and I'm going to ask you, what are your feelings towards the President's Trophy and how much it matters to the organization and the fan base? We know that the Stanley Cup banner is the end goal for the Winnipeg Jets, but in terms of whether it's attracting free agents or for a team that hasn't won a ton in these 14 seasons, I mean, what does it matter to a member of the fan base?
Well, listen, I mean, the team's been amazing. They've had a great season. I mean, I want all the banners. Now, there's one that matters a hell of a lot more than the other ones, and that's the Stanley Cup. So, if it came down and they had played Hellebuck 3 games in a row, and it's coming down where you've got a game, like the final game of the season against the Ducks, if you win the President's Trophy, but they weren't originally going to play Hellebuck, I don't think I changed the plan at all for it. But, I'm not one of these people that says, oh, I don't want them to win the President's Trophy because usually the Stanley Cup winner isn't that person. I went through the last 25 years, 4 President's Trophy winners, 4 second place winners, second place overall have won the Cup, 2/3, 4 fourths. You know what the common denominator is? Good teams win the Stanley Cup.
This just in. So you have to be great to win the Cup.
If you're in that, if you're winning your division, if you're at the top of your conference, you're in the mix. And the Jets are certainly in the mix for that. But yeah, listen, I was choked in 2019 when they blew the Central Division. We still have never seen a Central Division banner up, so I'm looking forward to that. And I'll tell you what, if they were able to get a President's Trophy, it would be a great exclamation point on an amazing regular season. But we all know that this team, at the end of the season, is going to be judged on what they're able to do in the playoffs, and an early playoff exit would really put a damper on all of that. So I think they're firmly focused on being the best that they possibly can be at the beginning of the playoffs and hopefully for a long playoff run. If that includes a President's Trophy, great. Because, Ken, this President's Trophy race is a 2-horse race. I mean, it's Washington and it's Winnipeg, and it certainly does add a little bit more juice to that game on Tuesday night. But I think you probably ask Spencer Carberry and Scott Arniel, they're most concerned with locking down first in their conference, being the number 1 seed, playing the second wild card, and putting themselves in a position that a lot of the other teams don't have by managing the final weeks of the season to, in their minds, give them the best chance to win. So would I like them to win the President's Trophy? Absolutely. I'm not adverse to it, but the goal is much bigger than that. Although it would be pretty cool to see that hanging up at the in the rafters at Canada Life Center. But we all know that it's the third banner, the one that's really going to crank people up. And that's one that you got to earn by winning 16 games after the regular season.
Yeah, good perspective. And yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense on a lot of levels to me as well, Huss. So yeah, I mean, and the other thing I'll be watching is, we saw it last year with both Brad Lambert and Nikita Chibrikov coming up and again getting a game in. I would think we're going to see the same with Elias Solomonson coming up late in the season, whether it's against Anaheim or against Edmonton, whatever the case may be. I think that he's earned the carrot, and and we'll see where that takes them. But I think that's that he's one of their top prospects, and I know there's lots of discourse and people going wild. Brad Lambert's not scoring. What's happening? I mean, the season for the Moose has not been as successful as they had planned. I would not be overly concerned about Brad Lambert. I think he showed well during his time up in Winnipeg. He knows the things that he needs to do in order to become an everyday NHLer. And I think that he's going to be on the roster next year. Where he slots in, that's up to him to decide. With how much work he puts in and everything else. Chibrikov showed incredibly well when he was up this year. He's still got to work in his skating, as we've talked about, but feisty player that I think obviously still has a big, bright future here with the organization. But it's not going to be a ton of call-ups. It's just going to be a couple guys getting a chance late in the year is how I look at it.
Just quickly, I mean, when the rosters expand, I mean, obviously right now you've got Gus and you've got Kapari, you've got Stanley that are extras. But like Parker Ford's out, Nikita Chibrikov is out. I would imagine Lambert and Salamonson would come up. Is there anybody else? I think Toninato for sure would be there as an insurance policy. Any other players you think that'll be part of the traveling group, at least as Black Aces?
Yeah, Coughlin on the back end for me. Huss would also be there, and then I would maybe Jared Anderson Dolan just because he's got experience, and we know he had a tough start, but he's had a better finish to the year. So those would be guys that I would see having the potential to be up here, and obviously Chris Drieger probably would be get the nod as more of a veteran guy in terms of the third goalie scenario. So that's sort of how I see it, and that's what I mentioned about Solomons, and I think you give him a carrot, but all due respect to Lambert, I don't know that he gets a ton of games late in the year. Because there's guys in front of him in line, Kapari and Gustafsson, as you mentioned up front, and
he's played. It's not like you've had a great season. You're coming up. This is the NHL. He played 5 games this year. He popped up last year. I mean, I think he'll get called up. I think he'll practice with the team. I think he'll be around. But
it's different for Solomons because he hasn't had his first NHL taste yet. So that's why I think he could jump the line past Stanley and Heinola. But I don't think that that's going to happen up front for the forward group. But I mean, there's those guys are going to have to be on standby. We know this, Huss. There's lots trickle down effect. There are injuries and things like that. You never know when the opportunity is going to come. But I just think that also because Solomons missed that time. He's now bounced back and played, I think, pretty well, according to most folks that are watching him. So I think he gets the carrot at the end. Other than that, I think the Jets will be mostly playing their own roster and trying to stay sharp. Now, if there's guys that are banged up, of course, those guys may sit, but I don't see a load management kind of cruise control scenario for the Jets in the last 12 games here. I don't think it's, this day, this guy sits out on that line. I think that if you're healthy, you're playing. And again, I think that when you start saying, oh, well, a guy could get hurt in a meaningless game. Well, a guy can get hurt in any game. So I think that they're going to continue that they play hard every night. They will be playing hard down the stretch here. And yeah, as you mentioned, I mean, it's a great battle. And the thing, Huss, too, like home ice doesn't guarantee you anything. But I'm going to tell you, and we saw it, if you have the opportunity to dictate the matchups, given the level of opponent the Jets are going to be facing, if they go and try to achieve their goal and go 4 rounds, of course you would prefer to have last change and have home ice if there was a game 7 in any of the 4 series, if they happen to be in them, right?
Especially when you're 25-5-4 at home on the year.
Exactly. Like this is not rocket science here. So, and the last thing I wanted to say, and sorry for the folks who didn't watch the show last night, I'm with you 100%, and I said it yesterday. There is no curse. Winning the President's Trophy is a badge of honor. It is not a scarlet letter. It is not something that says if you win the President's Trophy, you cannot win the Stanley Cup. That is absurd. Get that out of your mind. Anyone who's thinking that, the Jets have stacked victories all year long. If they win the President's Trophy, it is a good thing for their organization on a number of fronts, and it is not something that would deter them from winning 1 round, 2 round, 3 rounds, 4 rounds.
No,
so
and listen,
get that out of your mind right now.
Unfortunately, and this is part of kind of North American sports culture, but in the world of hot takes, like we actually don't respect the body of work enough. I mean, teams will have great seasons and they'll lose in a series and like, oh, they're losers. They didn't get it done in the playoffs when you've got 6 or 7 months of incredible work. Like, to me, I think the President's Trophy should be far more respected than it is. It is just the way that it is. But I mean, listen, is there some badge of honor of being the best team amongst 32 through 82 games? Yeah, for sure. And for a team that hasn't even put up a divisional banner since they've come to Winnipeg, back to Winnipeg, listen, it would be a great feather in the cap of a great regular season. But again, the second that President's Trophy is won, none of it matters because you're going into the playoffs. Ken, Speaking of Hellebuck, of course, he came in for 10 minutes in that game in Seattle that was unscheduled, has played the last couple games. We expect him to get the night off or the afternoon off, I guess, against Buffalo.
Right.
At that point, there'll be 11 games left in the season. I would imagine he'll be playing in that Washington game for sure. Another 2 days off before the Jersey game. We'll see him there. Then the schedule gets interesting. You've got another afternoon game on the Sunday against Vancouver. And then they hit the road. Go to LA, Vegas, and Utah. Back home for one home game against St. Louis. And then back out to Dallas, Chicago, finishing up with Edmonton, and then the Anaheim Ducks in the final game of the season, which is Wednesday, April 16th. And I would imagine the playoffs will be beginning on the 19th. If Comrie is going to get in on Sunday, of those 11 more games, does Comrie get 3 more starts, do you think? Like, will he play 4 of these final 12 games? How do you see that working out?
Yeah, Huss, I got the schedule in front of me here. If I had to, right now, I think you will see Eric Comrie against the Kings. You'll see 3 Hellebuck starts, then Comrie. Then you might see 4 Hellebuck starts, then Comrie against the Blackhawks, and then maybe you see Comrie against Anaheim in the finale. That would be, I mean, I'm just trying to have an educated guess here, right? I think it's somewhere around, right now at this point of the season, it's sort of 3 or 4 starts for Hellebuck to 1 for Comrie. So that's how I see it playing out right now. But again, these things, things can change, but that would be how I view it right now.
Yeah, I was trying to.
Now, again, the order can switch. Sure, we know that Comrie played 1 against Vegas already, but that's sort of how I see it. It's certainly interesting. Both Utah and St. Louis are both potential first-round opponents. Mm-hmm. Would it make sense to go with one of those games? Sure, but then you're running Hellebuck for 4 or 5 games, and I don't know that is I don't see that as being the plan right now. So. Kings are having a great year, but they're a low-volume team in terms of
Is
shot
there any
generation.
chance that they really lighten the load? What about this scenario? Comrie plays on Sunday.
Yeah.
Hellebuck against Washington and Jersey. Comrie plays against the Canucks.
Maybe.
And then you go, and then maybe it's Hellebuck, Comrie
against Utah.
Hellebuck, Comrie. That would be 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I don't see
that
it.
would be 5. That would be 5 of the final 12 games. That's probably not happening.
No, I think 4 would be the max there, Huss. But I mean, I think you're onto something. It could be 2 to 1 ratio at certain points, but I think it'd be more in that 3. I think you can count on for sure 2. I think it's going to be 3. It's going to be LA, Chicago, Anaheim is my best guess. Unless they switch the order, because if somehow the Jets start the playoffs on the Saturday, maybe Hellebuck wants Wednesday. So he's not a week between starts. But again, what we've seen over history is our guide. Hellebuck hasn't started the last game of the regular season, the last several when they've been in the race, right? So I think that's a safe one for Comrie and safe bet. And then Chicago makes sense. And like I said, one of LA, Utah, or St. Louis will be a Comrie start. So, I think 3 comfortably, and there could be a 4th in the last 12. I think it's going to be probably 3 comfortably. Then just also, too, I mean, the only wrinkle is that he had the 4 Nations 3 starts there, right? But otherwise, I think that they're pretty much on track with where they thought it would be for the course of the season. And Eric Comrie has made sure they could do that because of his level of play.
100%. Yeah, like I don't think there's any chance that Comrie only plays 3 of the remaining 12 games, but knowing that he's going to be playing against Buffalo on Sunday. Like, you'll get 3 more starts after Sunday for Comrie at some point. And the question is, I'm with you. I mean, that final game of the year, do they play Helly on the Saturday and on the Wednesday and roll him in, or do they back that up? And obviously, he'll probably be the biggest judge of all of that. Kenny, great stuff. I know you got the tour tee times booked on the weekend. How much longer is this?
Just one more, Huss. 7 of 9 will finish up tomorrow at the Duke. Yes, so Yeah, it's been a treat, been a real treat. Put one new course, Superstition Mountain. Our pal Marshall set it up with a pal of his, Dan LaCourcy, who is a former Canadian Tour and other tour player. Had a really fun day up there.
Have you had to pay a green fee yet?
Yeah, no. I'm going to be also 7 for 7 on green fees, Huss. So I know that speaking of badges of honor, but no, it's full freight at the Arizona Golf Tour here.
What are green fees like at some of these courses around there? I mean, you're not playing, the muni pitch and putts around here. I mean, has inflation hit the Arizona golf world as well?
It definitely has, yes, Huss. But 2 of those rounds were played at the Kenny McDonald Muni, which is a fun track. Even our pal Aaron Cockrell, who's on the DP Tour, always speaks fondly of the Kenny McDonald Muni. So that the prices have ranged from 45 to mostly around 100, but there was one green fee that was north of 2. So yes.
Has there been a Dennis Bayak sighting at all? Is Bayak often in and around there?
He's coming soon, but I'm going to just miss him. I think he is back from Buenos Aires, and he is going to be in Arizona in the first week of April. So I'm unfortunately going to miss our pal Dennis, though he has told me there is an outside chance he will be at the game in Vegas. So I don't want to. I shouldn't have said that on the air probably, but. Could be a Dennis Bayak sighting in Vegas, and if there is, it's always a good day when Dennis is in the building, especially when Gary and Shane and the rest of that Vegas crew, Dave Gosher and
the building we need
Danny
Dennis
Duva.
in is Canada Life Center. We got to get Dennis back to the peg, hopefully, preferably. What a treat for Dennis! All those years in the booth. He can come with the people. Maybe we'll get up in 316, throw the whites on him for a playoff game. Get that experience. Because, honestly, you're in that business for so long. You're such a part of it. You don't really get to experience that. And now, I mean, he's had an unbelievable year. I mean, you mentioned Argentina. Last time he was on, he was going on a cruise. He was going to Europe. He's definitely enjoying retirement, but that he'd love to be a part of playoff action for the Winnipeg Jets. Enjoy the baseball game today, buddy. May the putts drop, and we'll look forward to seeing you back here in Winnipeg very soon, and looking forward to the playoffs. But we'll talk to you next week. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me, my friend. And looks like you had a great turnout yesterday at your event. So great job on that front. And
that was a great time.
Enjoy the weekend, my man. Enjoy it.
You got it. There it is. Ken Wiebe at Wiebe's World, going low later this weekend and going to a ball game this afternoon down little spring training style. Great to have Ken join us on the program. All right, EJ Hradek's going to join us in just a couple of minutes. Listen, And Remo, maybe if you can, fire up a poll for this. Why not question of the day? Just there's been a couple comments, but I'd love to get some poll feedback on this. How people feel about the President's Trophy. I mean, I kind of will restate it. I mean, I think it would be really nice. It would be a nice token of an incredible regular season. But it really is that, and I think you should embrace it. It probably should be celebrated maybe a little bit more than it is. But again, the banner that everyone's looking for is the Stanley Cup Championship. Although I am looking forward though to a divisional banner. I get jealous when I look at all these other teams, that have multiple divisions, and the Jets have had great teams. They've been in a tough neighborhood. But there's been a couple very close calls. This is the year that they're finishing the job. And, of course, with finishing that job comes the number 1 seed, which, considering who's in second and third in the Central Division, is truly the business. But why not question of the day for not Autocorp at Waverly and McGillivray? How important is getting that Central Division or the President's Trophy, considering where the team is? It will come with home ice advantage if you were fortunate enough to make it through 3 rounds and get to the Stanley Cup final. Would guarantee you being the home team in every playoff series that you play, and that's certainly worth something. Ken mentioned the long change, but I am interested in what people think about that. We'll get to some fan feedback for you in just a minute. With fan feedback brought to you by Fans First. But hey, let me shout out our friends at Princess Auto, great supporters of WST. and so many aspects of our Winnipeg community and sporting community as well. Counting down the days to get to Princess Auto Stadium to see the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And of course, Princess Auto, founded in the Peg, headquartered right here and now coast to coast, but with 3 locations in Manitoba to serve you. Panet Road, Portage Avenue West, and out in Brandon for our friends in Westman. Princess Auto is where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete those projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. Pop by and see them this weekend in store, or shop today or any day, 24/7, 365 online over at princessauto.com. Speaking of great Winnipeg companies, a huge thanks to Wallace & Wallace for their support of WST. They're the fencing and overhead door specialists since 1946. If your property needs the security and protection of a new fence, or if winter's done a number on your old one, give them a call. They've got vinyl, ornamental, welded wire, chain link, wood fences, you name it, they have it. And if you need a new garage door, they got the biggest selection of garage doors, so they'll find one to perfectly match your home and add some value to it as well at the same time. 452-2700 is the number to give Wallace & Wallace a call. Their team will be happy to come down and arrange to give you a free estimate. You can also check them out online at wallacefences.com or see them in person at their showroom on Lawson Crescent, just off of Keniston. Hey, with spring just around the corner, fellas, many of you are probably looking to up your menswear game. Head on down to F Apparel if you want to do that. Custom suits starting at $400. Chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, tons of menswear accessories, and 2 great deals on right now. One for 2025 grads. If you've got a grad in the family or you are graduating, head on down to F. When you pick out a new suit, they'll hook you up with a free custom shirt and tie. And of course, if you're planning a wedding or in a wedding party, make sure to talk to the fellas at F about a great discount for wedding parties when you get your suits for the big day at F Apparel. They're at 190 Smith Street downtown. You can check them out online or make an appointment to come in for a fitting at F. That's EPH apparel.com. All right, EJ Hradek's coming up in a minute. But let's get to fan feedback brought to you by Fans First. Your number one spot for buying and selling Winnipeg tickets on the resale market with no added fees. When you go to fansfirst.ca and you pick out a pair of tickets, what you see is what you pay. Nothing on top of that, which is a nice change from most of the other players in that industry. An amazing customer service for sellers as well, and prompt payment the next business day after you play a game directly into your account. All right, well, I asked you, how do people feel about the President's Trophy? And the poll is this. The options are very important. Nice, but focuses on the cup. Doesn't matter. Just get in. Bad luck, President's Trophy curse. And I commend you, WSTers, that only 3% of you are bad luck, the President's Trophy curse. I don't buy into that at all. But I also maybe don't think it is incredibly important. I think this is where most people have sat in, and it's 76%. It would be nice. I mean, it would be a great way to finish an 82-game regular season. Unfortunately, this ain't the Premier League. They don't give you the title based on the regular season. They do it in the playoffs. And nice, but focuses on the cup is 74%, and I think that's where most people are today. There's... but I do see a lot of people with their thoughts in here. Rarely, M. Shrek says, rarely does the playoffs go chalk, so home ice through the playoffs probably doesn't matter. Big picture, is it the determining factor? Absolutely not. But I don't think there's a coach that wouldn't want last change and their home fans behind them in a deciding 7th game. So there certainly is the possibility of that. Dan Milburn says the Canucks won it back-to-back. First year they went to Game 7. The next year they were beat out in the first round. Hey, there's no guarantees. I think we all know that. Derek Schmidt, flags fly forever. We would get 3. Central, Western, and NHL. I don't think there's a Western Conference banner. I mean, you'd get a Western Conference banner if you win in the playoffs. But for the regular season, you get a divisional title and a President's Trophy. And again, the banner that everyone wants to see is the Stanley Cup banner as well. Vincent Toba says the President's Trophy, soon to be named Prime Minister's Trophy, I like that, is an achievement. Go for it. Who else do we have here? We've got Larry. I knew Larry would come with this. Again, there is only one banner that really means anything. I don't agree with that. I mean, I think winning your division, all that. I mean, if you're one of the person that says there's 31 teams that are a bunch of losers because only one team wins the Stanley Cup, I guess you can go that way. I don't prescribe to that. But as I said, it would be nice. And now, oh yes, and Remis did mention, we did have someone talk to us about the President's Trophy in the DMs. It is named after the president of the NHL, not the president of the United States.
I did need to clarify. I know Vince was joking, but yes, someone asked us in a DM if the players would boycott the ceremony or something, or the fans would boycott. It's like, it's president of the NHL. It was named after. No, U.S., Canada political connotation to the President's Trophy. You can have presidents of a lot of things, not just a country.
Well, that is true. And hey, here's one other way of looking at it. And again, like whether you win or don't win the President's Trophy, the goal is to win the Stanley Cup. If the Jets don't win the Stanley Cup, other than, having a quick exit and having the playoffs be a disaster right off the bat, I think we'll still look at this as an amazing season. If you're actually able to win the Stanley Cup and you were the best team in the league all year, you go down as one of the great teams, in NHL history, because it doesn't happen all the time. So again, I think there's a bonus to that. It's not changing. No one's saying, oh, we won the President's Trophy, so it doesn't matter what happens in the playoffs. No one's saying, hey, the team was the best team for 82 games. They're actually better than whoever wins the cup. Obviously, that's not happening. So it's interesting. I mean, I think people get it right, and this is where I'm at. It's nice. If it happens, great. We'll be pulling for the Jets to beat Washington on Tuesday and have a leg up on that. But at the end of the day, the focus is on winning in the playoffs, and that will be how the team and the overall season will be determined. Keep your fan feedback coming for Fans First, fanfirst.ca, by fans, for fans, no fees. Check out the site today. All right, Hacksaw is going to join us a little later on. We will get fired up for a marble race to officially kick off the weekend. But right now, let's talk a little bit more hockey and welcome in from NHL Network, EJ Hradek to Winnipeg Sports Talk. EJ, thanks so much for doing this, and welcome to Winnipeg Sports Talk. How are you?
I'm good. My pleasure to join you. Hey, the Jets have been a great story this year as they just keep rolling along. So, we'll see where it goes.
It has been a pretty magical season. And I mean, listen, I think a lot of people knew that this was a good team, although, when you play the way they did in a 5-game series against Colorado, that kind of hangs around. It hung around with the fan base, and it seemed like the players really chewed on it. But let me ask you, did you think the Jets were a playoff team? How much have they exceeded your expectations so far this season?
Well, they've exceeded my expectations in the fact that, what did they start the season? Like 15-1, 16, some crazy start. Then they had another 10 or 11 winning streak in there as well. So they have just been really good and really consistent throughout most of the year. I had a good chance to see the Jets early in the year when they came through New York, and I was really impressed with what I saw, and talking to Scott Arniel and talking to some of the players in the room that night after they beat the Rangers. They were really, they were a group, I think, that was unhappy with the way things ended last year against Colorado and determined to, like most teams that are good teams that struggle in the playoffs, that these guys are competitive, and you get that burning desire to do more and to compete harder and to get to that ultimate goal of winning a Stanley Cup. So, it seemed like they were really a team when I saw them, even early in the year, as opposed to a collection of individuals. I think they've learned from some of the, series they've been in. And I will defend them a little bit against, Colorado. Colorado is a unique team. They've got fire to burn with that group, with McCarr and McKinnon and some of the other players they have in that group on the back end. they're a hard team to deal with. And, this year, the good news for the Jets is they're in first place. They're going to finish first in their division, and they're going to let Dallas and Colorado beat the daylights out of each other. And if they win and take care of business in the first round, they'll get a chance to either play Winnipeg or Dallas, and maybe a lessened group in round number 2. We'll see. They have to take care of their own business. And I think it would be interesting if the Jets, I think it would be the Jets and the Blues today, which would be interesting because you'd have Hellebuck and Binnington again. So we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, the Winnipeg St. Louis goes back to, 2019 as well, when, the Jets and Blues were going in exact opposite directions going into the playoffs. And we know where St. Louis finished up. That was with the parade. But the Central overall is fascinating. I mean, both Colorado and Dallas made big additions. Yeah. And listen, the Jets were in on Brock Nelson. For those of us following this team so closely, it was a little tough to swallow that Thursday night that Brock Nelson was traded to the Avs, and then Nico Rantanen shows up. But I'll say this, with the way the Jets played, maybe the best statement game they've had in a long time last Friday against Dallas, knowing the leverage of that game when it came to first place. And, as we go into the action tonight, there's 12 games left. They have a 10-point lead over Dallas, not just for the division, but the West, which is pretty incredible, both what Winnipeg and Washington have done and just how they've separated themselves. But I've got to ask you, just thoughts on a potential Dallas-Colorado round 1 series. One of those teams being out seems almost crazy, but that's the way we have it in the play with the NHL playoff format.
Yeah, that's the format that we have right now. I know some people play with the, if we go back to the 1-8, I think in the 1-8 in the East right now would still be Tampa and Toronto, I think would play in the first round. So I don't think there's any perfect playoff format. Some are a little better than others. I know that if you went back to the 1 versus 16, which I think the league did, like in the early 80s. I know following the Islanders at that time, that was when they won their first cup. I believe it was 1 through 16, and it might have been for 2 years in there. And then they went back to conference formats. I don't think the league has any appetite to go to 1 through 16 for a variety of reasons. So I think we're left with what we're left with right now. I'm an advocate of maybe a play-in, maybe having the 9 and 10 teams get in there, and just to give some teams an opportunity to get in the playoffs. It's hard to get in, and some of these franchises missed the playoffs for years and years and years. But to your point about Dallas and Colorado, I just think it'll be a battle. And I think really I always say the playoffs are about matchups and injuries. And, for the Dallas Stars, they got a pretty big injury with Miro Heiskanen being out of the lineup. Now, if he cannot play in the playoffs or he can't play early in the playoffs, that's going to put them in a tough spot against a really good Colorado team. But I think the winners in that first round will be fans because, we'll be on the edge of our seats watching those games. Those will be highly competitive games.
EJ, you mentioned the playoff format. That was one of the things that was kicked around at the GM meetings where you were down there covering for NHL Network. We might be getting Edmonton, LA for the 4th straight year. Yeah. Listen, there's arguments on both sides, but it doesn't sound like there's much of an appetite, certainly from Gary Bettman, who's the most important voice in the room about moving away from the set bracket and moving through the division. And we're going to have another incredible 2-3 matchups in the first round.
Yeah, he made a point. Even I interviewed him on the final day of the meetings, and he made a point of saying, hey, it's not so bad to have great matchups in the first round. I think the challenge for the National Hockey League with the playoff system as it is, first of all, it does create these kind of, unfortunate circumstances. Dallas and Colorado are 2 of the best, 4 or 5 teams in the league. One of them will be going home after 2 weeks of the playoffs. I think the way the NHL playoffs set up is that the best round is the first round, and we never really get the best 2 teams in the Cup final. It doesn't mean we don't get good Stanley Cup final series. We got a really good one last year that was unique in that it was 3-0, and then it almost went the other way to Edmonton and forced a Game 7. But what I'm saying is we never get that. So like Colorado and Dallas, if you did it maybe in a different manner, if you did it 1 through 16, you might get that matchup in the final. So we never really get the best teams in the final because of the way it's set up. So listen, you got to beat the teams you play. That's just the way it is. You got to create the path. Like Winnipeg has created a little better path for themselves this year with the way they've played in the regular season, because they've been just lights out good all year long. They'll, as we say, like right now it would be St. Louis in round one. I think we could all agree it would be easier to play St. Louis in the first round than Dallas or Colorado. Now you still have to beat them, and then eventually you end up seeing one of those teams. But to me, if you can finish first, you don't have to beat both of them to get to the third round. Like last year, you would have had to beat Colorado and then Dallas to get to the next round. So it would have been very difficult. The path was more difficult. This year, the path is a little easier, but you still have to get it done. I mean, Washington is in that situation in the Metro. They'll likely get the last wild card, or, you know, in the last seed. They, you know, if they can handle that business, winner of Carolina, New Jersey, I mean, you've created a better path for yourself, but you have to be healthy at that time. You have to take advantage. I mean, look what happened with Boston a couple of years ago. They had that unbelievable season. You thought they created a good path for themselves, and they ended up drawing the Florida Panthers, who were hot at the right time.
EJ, one other thing I wanted to ask you about the GM meetings is just the aftermath of the Four Nations, which was, I mean, honestly, one of the greatest, you know, quick little mini tournaments. It was one of the greatest couple of weeks for hockey that we've seen in a long time, and especially the NHL. What were you hearing moving forward from the GMs? Because I'll be honest, the bar's set pretty high, and an all-star game, certainly the way that it's happened the last few incarnations of it, I'm not sure really is going to get the juices flowing. And of course, we've got more added best-on-best competition coming forward.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. The All-Star game, you know, with the exception of baseball, which is a little different, right? It's not a physical game.
Yeah.
So, you know, you can have a pitcher versus hitter confrontation, you know, and still it's a competitive battle out there. When you get into, you know, football has done away with their game. The NBA took a beating this year for what's gone on there. You know, in the past, we know we've had that discussion about the NHL All-Star game. I mean, I just don't know. I've been around a long time. They've done it in a lot of different ways. There's just no way to do it well, because you don't want guys to get hurt in an exhibition, really. And guys, it's a no-win situation, because if you get a Johnny Tryhard that's running around the ice, you're a bad guy for that. And if you're lazy and just kind of going through the motions, you're a bad guy for that. So I think you know, I would prefer to see it, you know, go the way of the dodo bird, so to speak, and we'd be done with it. I know that, you know, talking to Steve Mayer and some of the people after the meetings concluded on Wednesday, you know, there's real discussion about how they're going to handle what is on the schedule right now, an all-star game at UBS Arena. The Islanders would be hosting. As the players come in, they're going to leave for the Olympics through JFK in New York, the airport there in New York. So there's going to be some sort of event that the Islanders are going to host. But right now, I don't know if it's going to be an all-star game per se, or maybe, you know, some kind of big fan fest or some kind of skills competition. Not quite sure, but they are really trying to think about it, because you said it, and they used the same words. They set the bar high. It wasn't, as we in hockey know, like what took place with the Four Nations, that wasn't an all-star game. That was an international competition, and there's a long history of international competition in hockey. And the guys, you know, they're prideful when they play for their countries. So, you know, some people who follow casually down here in the U.S., who follow sports, they look at that and they say, well, they've replaced the all-star game with something really great. It's not the same thing, and they're not running it every year. As you know, they're having the Olympics next year, and then we'll have that schedule, a World Cup of Hockey. I think the timing really is the biggest thing and why it was such a success, because the league has never been bold enough to run a tournament like this or a World Cup in February. They run them in August and September, when really in the United States, I can tell you, nobody really cares, because there's NFL, there's Major League Baseball, there's college football. And in Canada, even you guys are still enjoying the last vestiges of the cottage time and enjoying time outside before it gets really cold. It's not a great window to have that kind of tournament. You run it in February, your rinks, you control everything, which is great too, because at the Olympics, you don't control highlights and a lot of the things you could do to promote the game. The timing was great. The Super Bowl ends. It's cold weather. It's still hockey season. Sports fans are looking for something. And the NHL gave them a great show. And I think the Olympics next year, albeit a little different because it's in a different time zone, we'll also have some of that. And then a World Cup in February, I think, will be terrific as well.
You know, EJ, one thing I wanted to ask you as it relates to the Four Nations and moving forward and just GM meetings was the point system for the games. I mean, last night, I think like 80% of the games went to overtime and you had the third point.
Yeah.
And listen, I've been on this hill for a long time. I always love talking to my friend Pierre LeBrun about this.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense that some NHL games are worth 2 and some NHL games are worth 3.
Amen. Amen.
And right now, while we say there's sort of this forced parity, everybody's close, the addition of the 3-point game in every game also gives teams the ability to make up much more ground than is realistically possible right now. Was there any talk about that? I mean, do you get any inkling that there are champions for that playoff format and change moving forward, or point system, I should say? Because I think it would be a huge win for the NHL, even if people might not see it right now.
There's nothing that tells me among the people who will be involved in making a change that there's any appetite for that right now. And I don't think we would see something like that probably until whenever Gary leaves as the commissioner and we get into a new era. And I don't know when that's going to be. Gary seemed, I interviewed him. He seemed great. He seems eager to be on the job for years to come. So, you know, and we can always argue about, you know, how things have gone over 30 years. I think generally speaking, I mean, this league is in a much better place now than it was in the early 90s. So, you know, I think you have to give Gary a lot of credit for that. But at the end of the day, I don't think he has any desire for that. I don't hear it come up, although I agree with you. That's the biggest problem for me, is that I don't get how a single game can have two values, can be worth 3 points or worth 2 points. That to me doesn't really add up. I'm bold enough to say, even let's just go to wins and losses. If you win in a shootout, it's a win. If you win in overtime, it's a win. It makes the standings, certainly, you know, I come from being in the U.S., I'm always looking for ways to make this simpler for fans here. Fans are used to wins and losses, games back, or a half game back, or 2 games back. So for me, you have a shootout. That's the way we've decided. That's the way we're going to solve games. Why why try to split the baby here? You won, it's a win. You lose, it's a loss. In lieu of that, if you don't want to go that far, 3-2-1-0 is fine. It's just more complicated for the average fan.
Yeah, I mean, I think very quickly people would get it. I mean, the fact that we'd have a constant value for every single game. Yeah, it's either 3-0 or 2-1. Yeah. I mean, we'll be going forward. Hey, one other thing about the GMs, and I remember Remis and I were in Vegas last year at the Sphere for the draft, one of the great spectacles that I've ever witnessed, certainly to do with the draft. Yeah. And I heard over and over again from people within the media, but also from NHL teams, going, I can't believe this is it. And we're going to these decentralized drafts this year. I mean, much like the Four Nations, the bar was set so high, and then everyone's just staying home next year. Now, selfishly, it's an incredible week for media. I mean, it really is the true hockey convention of the world, and that won't happen this year. But I'm hearing a lot from the GM meetings that it sounds like there's an appetite maybe to make this one and done. What do you think the future of the NHL draft is?
Well, I think a lot will depend upon how it comes off, right? Like, I know the commissioner, again, has been very clear. When the commissioner does not agree with something, he just says things like, well, it was the wishes of the clubs to do it this way. Yeah. You know, I remember, like, with the challenging offsides, I remember Gary was not in bed with that idea. And yet he went along with it, that it wasn't really his, you know, he was not really all that in favor, but there was overwhelming pushback. They went with it. We see what's happened, right? It's been kind of really, it's created a lot of chaos.
The commissioner was right.
He was right? You know, in terms of you're opening Pandora's box. Are you sure? Because I always felt that was weird too, that, like, you know, hockey operations said, well, we looked at it all year. There was only a few plays. I'm like, do you know how many entries there are in a single game? More or less every single game in the NHL. I mean, entries just in a period can be, you know, there could be a, you know, a lot. I mean, I don't even have a number. There could be a lot depending upon who's playing. In this case, they're going to try it. It's going to be at the Peacock Theater in Los Angeles. The players will be there. The prospects will be there. Gary will announce the first pick. And then after that, they are really pushing to have, celebrities and former players and different people make the picks for the teams, kind of like what you see with the NFL. So, like, for example, Will Ferrell is a big Kings fan. Will Ferrell maybe makes the Kings pick. John Hamm obviously has been involved with St. Louis for years. He would make their pick. They're going to invite the quarter century team out to Los Angeles. So, again, you look at who would be on that team. That guy might make the pick for the team that he's most associated with. So I think the first night could be a good show, especially from LA. I think they'll do that well. It'll be interesting with the players there. They're going to have a room where these guys are going to go in, and when they're picked, they get to kind of virtually meet some of the staff there. So, I don't know how I'm not up on all that technology. We'll see how that goes. But I think the problem is going to be day two, because we dealt with this back at the NHL Network when we were doing the virtual drafts. They did it out of our studio during COVID. Nobody is running for the plane, right, on day two when it's virtual. There's nobody in a race to get to the airport for that 3:45 flight. So now there's less urgency making the picks. And when it's live, and I've covered a lot of drafts in my life, when it's live, those guys whip through that second day, bang, 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 because people have places to go. When they are not there in person, if we're looking at 5, 6, 7, 8 hours to do that second day, that, my friend, is where we will return to the on-site draft. So we'll see how it goes. I'm open to it, but I listen. We're all creatures of things that have happened and what we know. I think most people in hockey really enjoy being at the draft with all the 32 clubs and all the scouts and all the managers and all the different media people that are there. I think it's been something that's kind of is what we're about in hockey, but they're trying something different. We'll see how it works.
Yeah, I mean, listen, from a media perspective, selfishly, it's the best week of the year. I mean, you get a chance to make so many contacts. I mean, certainly for people in the business, but also with teams. I mean, there's a lot of work that gets done sort of behind the scenes that, there's a unique nature of being able to look face to face. And I didn't even think about the prospects. But I mean, these old school hockey guys, I mean, they want to be able to shake the kid's hand and look him in the eyes and tell him, you're on a flight tomorrow to development camp coming up next week. So, and
there's another thing too. There's meetings that take place with the prospects during that week.
Yes.
Of the draft, where they go and meet with certain teams. Now, they'll do that at the combine. There's other ways to do that. It's not something that has to happen in that window. Like I said, I think night one, it'll be, because Steve Mayer and the events group do a really good job. I think that could end up being a really good show from the Peacock Theater there. It's going to be the same theater where they did the NHL 100, which, for my money, was one of the best events the NHL ever pulled off. So I think night one will be fine. I just think that day two is kind of where it's going to get interesting to see how many hours it takes to do those couple of rounds. I'm sure they'll try to push everybody along, but there's something to be said. When you need to get to the airport, you're going to be moving a little quicker.
EJ Hradek is with us from the NHL Network. Man, this is such a fun conversation, EJ. And just before we go, speaking of fun, we do have some pretty interesting battles for final playoff spots in both sides. I mean, as we go into action tonight, you got Montreal 2 points up on the Islanders and Rangers, 3 up on Columbus, 4 up on Detroit. And over in the West, St. Louis, for the first time maybe all season, is in that spot. They're 1 up on Vancouver, 2 up on Calgary, 3 up on Utah. If you had to look into the EJ Hradek crystal ball, I mean, where does this settle out, and who would you be putting a nickel on to get those 8 spots in both conferences?
Yeah, well, I like Ottawa and Montreal in their current spots. I mean, but, I'll say this, because we all, I guess, we see a team, they lose, there's 12, 13, 14 games left. Oh, they're out. It's a tough ball. Can't get past it. Yeah, but there's still 20. Like, if you have 12 games left, there's still 24 points on the table, right?
Yeah.
So, I think if you're trying to make up 6 points, 8 points, it's tough. It's really tough. Not impossible, but it's tough. I've been a big proponent this year. My producer of our show at the NHL Network, JD Lindbergh, he's a great young guy, and we go back and forth every day because, like, you guys we're talking about things every day, and like he's a younger guy, so his instinct is like, they're out of it, or they're done, and I'm like, JD,
the takes are hot.
JD, wait, to give you the Bill Clement, wait. It's just you need. These teams, the reason they're in this spot is because they're not good enough to roll off the 8 or 6 wins in a row. Sometimes they do, but then they're just as good. They're just as bad to roll off 6 or 8 losses in a row. Look at Detroit. They've had the same season now back-to-back. Going into March, look good, playing well, rolling along. This year they had a coaching change. Power play's killing it. They go 0-6 to start March, and now they have a killer schedule. I think that would be really a reach for the Red Wings based on their schedule to get there. But for the Islanders, how many? They've been buried 12 times this year.
Yeah.
And here they are, 2 points out, and they're right in the mix of things. So I do think Montreal's a great story. I'd love to see them get there this year. I think it would be great for their organization. I think Ottawa's pushed to the point where I know they had a bad night against Colorado, but I think they're going to get there. Montreal, will see. The Islanders are still in the mix. Columbus, if they could just put together some wins. They were there, and now they've had this stretch where, they can't score anymore. They were one of the highest scoring teams in the league for most of the season. Now they can't score. They lose last night in overtime to Florida 1-0. I think they've lost 5 or 6 in a row, or 7 of 8 since the Winter Classic, or the Stadium Series game there. So they've had all kinds of problems. The Rangers are really a collection of individuals and not a team, in my view. They do have some good individuals, and they have a hell of a goalie, so they're still in the mix. But boy, oh boy, it's going to be a chase. And in the West, St. Louis is playing well, and so for me, I think St. Louis has every opportunity to hold on to that spot. But Calgary, they beat the Rangers the other night on back-to-back nights for them and played really well. And then they rallied to beat the Devils. They don't seem to want to go away. Vancouver's still right there. So, I would favor St. Louis because I think they've been playing the best, and I think their schedule is favorable. And I think, Montreal, has got a chance to kind of hang on to that spot. But it's going to be, it's a crazy race. And I'll just tell you, like I tell my producer, let's not count anybody out yet. These are inconsistent teams. And when you have inconsistent teams, different things can happen.
EJ, it's such a pleasure having you on the program. Fired up for this stretch drive, and of course in the playoffs. Fill our listeners and viewers in on when they can see you and all your work over at NHL Network.
Yeah, well, we have our show Monday through Friday is NHL Tonight First Shift, which is 4 to 5 Eastern Time. It's on NHL Network. I think you get it on Sportsnet in Canada, which is great for us to have the Canadian audience there. So it also is available in podcast form. It's an audio-only podcast for now on YouTube, so you can get it there. And then I end up calling a bunch of games as well. I'm calling the Canucks and Rangers on Saturday with Mike Johnson, and I've got the Blackhawks and Flyers on Sunday. So I'm always bouncing around doing something. I've been very fortunate. Hopefully keep them. The old story is just trying to keep everybody fooled as long as possible.
Well, listen, I know how busy you are, and we appreciate you taking the time to join us here in Winnipeg. And fingers crossed that the Jets can hang around long enough that they'll be a top story for a while on the NHL Network as we get into the playoffs.
I would love nothing more to be up in Winnipeg for the final this year because the fans up there are great fans. And that team – they've had some tough struggles over the years, ups and downs, but they got some really good players there, and that'll be something if they can get to a cup final.
EJ, have a great weekend. Thanks again for your time.
All right. Thank you. We'll see ya.
All right. Really appreciate EJ Hradek jumping on. Great for Remis to help set that up. We've got marbles coming up in a few minutes. Pay attention. In about 7 or so, we'll open up registration. And we're going to bring in Lee Hacksaw Hamilton in just a moment. Of course, Jets in action on Sunday afternoon. Might be a great time to bring out some of the kids if you haven't been able to make a game so far this season. Thank you to everyone that joined us last night at BP and also is going to join us next Friday for our final WST game of the month with the Winnipeg Jets. And I can tell you that I believe a couple people jumped on seats last night from the watch party because we're sold out now for the second time. So we had our first allotment. Those went. We added more. Those are gone. So, hey, let's do it. Let's make it 6-0, maybe 8-0 total if we include our 2 watch parties this year. Getting together with the Winnipeg Sports Talk gang. Looking forward to seeing you next week. There are still deals, though, for this upcoming homestand. Find out more over at winnipegjets.com. And it was great to see Greg and Gerald from Royal Sports last night. A lot of people asking about the hat Gerald was wearing. A very unique blue and white Jets hat that, like most things, you won't find anywhere else other than Royal Sports. The hat wall has never looked better. And as we get ready for the playoffs and for spring, if you're looking for a really unique look that you won't find anywhere else, check out the special new era Winnipeg Jet collab hats that they did that are available at Royal right now. And thanks again to Royal for their great support of WST and coming out last night with the crew and enjoying the game. Of course, Royals at 750 Pembina Highway, the best selection in Winnipeg Jets merchandise, Bombers, NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA, international soccer, you name it, they've got it. Not to mention bikes coming in for spring as we get ready to get out on the roads again, and tons of cool stuff for spring and summer waiting for you on the King's Skate, Snow, and Surf side. So pop by Royal Sports, 750 Pembina Highway, and check them out on Instagram. Give them a follow at Royal Sports Winnipeg for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. And, of course, a big thanks to the Boston Pizza Garden City crew for taking such good care of everyone last night. Always love dealing with BP for their great staff. And, man, we did it up. We had 1919s on tap now at Garden City and Boston Pizza Polo Park. Jumped on those world-famous BP wings. We had a large Meteor pizza, and we got a Jet win. It was a great, great spot to be. Of course, if you want to jump in on the madness, BP's the place to do it. They'll have all the games coming up for the next couple days. And then, of course, Saturday or Sunday afternoon, if you're not at the rink, BP with pick-a-player contests for every Winnipeg Jets game when you watch the games at Boston Pizza. And, of course, we did that party last night with our friends at Little Brown Jug, Winnipeg's favorite local brewery. And when you're at BP Garden City, Bar P Polo Park, and other Boston pizzas throughout the province, keep your eyes out for Little Brown Jug on tap. And of course, hey, it's the weekend. Beer Friday, says Hacksaw. Great time to crack an LBJ, a 1919, or a generic if you can find that on tap, which it is, I know, at the Osborne Tap House and a number of locations throughout Winnipeg. Let's do this. Oh, I just also want to thank Pitt and the gang at Aikens Lake. Cannot wait to get out there. Shout out to Mark Larveld, WST listener, who purchased the auction for the Health Sciences Center Foundation to come out for a great 3 days, 3 nights on the water, hosted by me. Looking forward to it, Mark. We're going to have a great time. And again, if you're thinking about maybe your holiday plans have changed a little bit with everything going on, you want to stay north of the border, you want to keep it Canadian, how about staying in Manitoba for the jewel of the province, Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge? Find out more on the Aikens experience and availability for 2025 at aikenslake.com. Or check them out and follow on all of the social channels at Aikens Lake. All right, the madness is underway. We've got very important meetings amongst the NFL owners happening, and there's still a few teams looking for quarterbacks. Let's get to the NFL notebook with Lee Hacksaw Hamilton, as we do on Fridays. Saw, what's going on? How are you enjoying the hoops for the first couple days?
Eyes are falling out of my head. I watched so much basketball on the first night of the tournament. And, it's kind of unique. We had 4 teams from San Diego, both San Diego State, UCSD, both men's and women's, both got there. Now 3 of them are already out. And obviously there's Lady Aztecs have to go play at LSU against Kim Mulkey on Saturday night. So our postseason playoffs might be over by the end of the weekend. But it's something unbelievable here at this side of the border, obviously, is March Madness. So it's really cool. And there will be more upsets going forward, trust me.
Yeah, no doubt. Pretty chalky yesterday. A couple of McNeese State was a big upset. We did see Mississippi State go down earlier to Baylor. I think that was an 8-9 game. So it wasn't a huge upset. But tell you, speaking of upsets, and we were just talking about this before we brought you on, Jets and Capitals get to 100 points in the NHL last night. Jets now with a 10-point lead over Dallas. When we spoke last week, we were all hyped for that huge game between the Jets and Stars. But the big story coming out of last night in the Jets-Oiler game wasn't the Kyle Connor OT winner or the Jet win. It was the availability of Leon Draisaitl, who wasn't there to start the game, and Connor McDavid, who wasn't there at the end of the game. Kind of shockwaves through the hockey world and a lot of nervous fans in oil country right now.
Well, I'm not quite sure what the specifics are on McDavid, though. It looked like he got slashed. So I don't know if he got slashed on the wrist or the forearm, or maybe it's a quad injury. But he was gimpy coming off. And obviously, Draisaitl, I think, might have a knee. They're not talking about it. And I think there's also a little bit of private concern that Stuart Skinner might have some type of concussion. So all of a sudden, Edmonton has gotten dinged a little bit. But if you lose him for a week, that's fine. You still got, obviously, the tail end of the season, and then you got all of the playoffs. So you got to get him healthy. And you're going to play a best of 7 regardless of who the hell you're playing and where you finish. So, Edmonton's holding its breath. But hey, I take so many hockey calls on my podcast, this side of the border. It just absolutely stuns me. And as I said this past week, everything in the NHL, western side of the conference, is going to go through Winnipeg. So if we're going to be talking about who's who, just remember somebody's got to go to Winnipeg. And I don't know whether that's the Oilers, whether that's Vancouver playing for its life, whether it's the streaky LA Kings. It's obviously a high-powered Dallas team, but everybody's got to go through what's your area code?
204, the 204, Lee.
Got to go through the 204 area code to play in the Stanley Cup. So it's going to be good. And obviously, I tend to think the Stanley Cup is the toughest trophy in sports to go get.
Yeah, well, I mean, St. Louis jumped into that spot. It's really, I mean, three teams that are starting. It's either, they're a point back, but they've got a game in hand. St. Louis, Vancouver, Calgary, Utah, a couple points back. And I do see Remis responding to a question about the Jets playoff, clinching a playoffs. Apparently, the Jets will clinch a playoff berth on Saturday, before they even play, if the Blues lose to the Blackhawks in any fashion and the Canucks lose to the Rangers in regulation. So maybe that won't happen, and we can get out to the rink on Sunday afternoon, beat the Sabres, take care of business themselves, and punch that ticket to the Stanley Cup playoffs. Lee, let's get over to the NFL notebook and NFL owners spring meeting. This is always a time that brings out potential tweaks in a number of aspects, but including the schedule and the on-field product. Give us a little rundown of what the shot callers of the NFL are dealing with this week.
Well, let me just kind of walk through it real quickly for you. They are going to look at a couple of different proposals. One, there is dialogue about an 18-game schedule, and the league can invoke that. Not that the union has to sign off it. The union's pushing back on going to 18 games regular season, but the byproduct would delete another preseason game. There'd only be 2 exhibition games. It would start the NFL season the first weekend of September, which is usually reserved for college football, but all things NFL is about money. So they would open on Labor Day weekend. I don't know if this is going to come for a vote. I don't know if 18-game schedule is just around the corner a year from now, but I think there's going to be more dialogue about that. They are talking about changing the overtime. There is a proposal from one of the clubs to go from a 10-minute overtime to a 15-minute overtime regular season. And both teams are guaranteed of a possession rather than this current rule they have in season, which is 10 minutes. And if you win the toss of the coin, you score a touchdown. It's over. The other guy doesn't touch the ball. They're now talking both sides would get a kick at the can on a new overtime format.
Is the PA on that, just quickly, if they wanted to do that and they're adding more time to overtime, is that something they need to get sign off from the PA, or can they just invoke that?
No, that would be collectively bargained. And you could go outside the CBA and say, okay, this is an addendum thing. But no, in the union, everything is a trade-off. If I'm doing this, you got to give me something else. But that is actively being discussed. They're also talking about the reseeding of the playoffs. As you know,
yes.
We get the guaranteed division winners go to the upper part of the playoffs, and then everybody else gets dumped in based on their record. And now what the proposal is, the top team in the conference, NFC, would get the number 1 seed. And then everybody else would be seeded based on their division records. I guess you could call this the Minnesota Vikings rule, because they don't want a repeat of a Minnesota Vikings team that has a hell of a season, but winds up being the 5th seed because they didn't win their division and had to drop down. So that might pass. That's going to be a lot of conversation there.
So basically, if you win your division, no longer would you be guaranteed a home game in round 1.
They don't want somebody with an 8-9 record who won in a bad division to be a home team in the first round of the playoffs. So I think this reseeding idea got a lot of validity to it. That's a good point there. A replay, a lot of dialogue. Officials, tough game. It's a tough game to officiate. It's such a fast game, such a physical game. There's conversation about allowing the coaches to have 2 replay challenges for hits on their quarterback. There's been a lot of stuff in the last year or so, notably in the playoffs. My quarterback got hit in the face mask, no penalty. My quarterback got hit in the head. You didn't throw a flag, you missed it. Now there's talk, because we got technology, we got instant replay, got cameras everywhere. There is talk, coach's challenge, you can throw a flag. My guy got hit in the face mask, you missed it. Review it. There's also obviously further instant replay from the booth, in which the booth can look at things and message down to the referee. Now, they've got that in place for certain plays, but it's only about picking up a flag. Like you threw a flag you shouldn't have thrown. What they're discussing now is booth replay, where they can message down to the referee, you missed this crackback block, you missed this chop block, you missed the hit on this quarterback, you missed the guy getting blown up on the sidelines, throw a flag. There's been a lot of pushback about that, but you got the technology, get the play right, and if the refs miss a call, let the booth say that was a penalty, throw the flag. So that might happen. A lot of conversation about the tush push, whether this is going to get outlawed. A lot of teams of the opinion it's a really dangerous play for the interior of the defensive lineman and the offensive lineman. I don't know whether it's going to get eradicated because the Eagles have the patent to it right now. Also talk about the onside kick, because nobody can convert it. There is now serious conversation about taking a team that wants to have an onside kick, just make it a 4th and 20. And if you convert the 4th and 20, it'll be equal to recovering an onside kick, and you'll retain possession. Onside kick's got some inherent dangers on it in terms of the collisions and all that. But that's going to be dialogue. So, like I say, these meetings at West Palm Beach, Hustler, there's a lot of stuff they're going to talk. They're going to make some changes here. I'm not quite sure which is the hot one. I'd like the quarterback challenge, where you hit my quarterback in the face mask of the head. I want you to review it and throw that penalty flag. I want to see that more than I like some of the other stuff.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if the overtime gets changed. It usually only gets changed when the Chiefs beat the Bills in the playoffs, and then they have to go back to the drawing board and change everything for that. Just an editorial on that. We do know the 13-second game and more. It's kind of funny how much overtime has really changed over. I mean, I think back to the Brett Favre, Drew Brees NFC Championship game, where it was, you win the coin toss, you get 2 first downs, you kick a field goal and you win. How far we've come from that, but I think it has been good for the game. Lee, at the same time, free agency quieted down, but there are still some teams looking for starting quarterbacks. I see Aaron Rodgers was in the Steelers facility today, meeting with the Pittsburgh Steelers. No deal imminent, according to Adam Schefter, but certainly that is an option for Pittsburgh and an option for Rodgers. But in true Rodgers fashion, he doesn't seem to be in any sort of a hurry to make a decision.
Hustler, I think everybody's tired of the Aaron Rodgers drama.
You don't say.
I think that's why Rodgers showed up in Pittsburgh suddenly. He's running out of locales to go. That's an item. Minnesota rejected the request that he go up there a second time and meet with the Vikings. They said, no, Minnesota doesn't have a starting quarterback right now, though they do have J.J. McCarthy under contract recovering from the major knee surgery. But I'm not going to say Rodgers is toxic, but Rodgers becomes such a distraction that people are just tired of the stuff off the field. And again, we might have talked about this a week ago. When Rodgers makes his choice, he's going to have to decide he's going to play for a team that's coached by a head coach that's going to do what the head coach wants. He goes to Pittsburgh, it's going to be Tomlin's team, not Aaron Rodgers' team. And they're going to run the freaking football. Hopefully they'll throw it better because I know they got better wide receivers. I still think Rodgers has a lot of gas in the tank. But the guy is just such a distraction. He's become such a diva. I think he's kind of really stained his reputation. He's out there. Russell Wilson is out there. He visited the Giants. I just don't know how much gas he's got left in the tank. Jameis Winston, you thought, but, he's got such a reputation of turnovers that can you trust your offense with Jameis Winston? Joe Flacco was in Pittsburgh. He visited Pittsburgh early last week. And, of course, they already have Mason Rudolph under contract. Now, I don't think this would go down real well if Pittsburgh told its season ticket holders, well, we're going to have Mason Rudolph and Joe Flacco be your quarterbacks this season. I don't think that would go down very well. The unique name that's not getting any push at all is Trey Lance, who's now in line to probably be the backup quarterback in Dallas. But in cameo appearances, the ex-Green Bay Packer guy, he's played okay. He's played well. He's never gotten a full chance again. But Trey Lance is out there. Carson Wentz is out there. There's an intriguing trade that I think is going to happen. New England's got this young quarterback that they developed, played him in preseason, but there's no room for him. Joe Milton, a kid out of, I think he's from Tennessee State, or maybe it's the University of Tennessee. And Joe Milton might get traded. And Will Levis in Tennessee might be on the way out the door. Maybe he's on the block. And he had a year and a half, and he was hot, then he was cold, etc. So we got teams right now without starting quarterbacks.
What about Kirk Cousins? He signed that 4-year deal last year with the Dirty Birds, lost his job at the end of the season. They drafted Penix in the first round. He clearly is the quarterback of the future. Cousins reportedly asked for his release, didn't get it. I would think he would be a perfect guy to come into Minnesota and, play for a few weeks if J.J. McCarthy isn't ready, and then be a very quality backup behind the rookie if they needed it. What are you hearing about Cousins?
I hear that Cousins might be traded for a third-round draft pick. But the problem is, Hustler, he's 37. The other problem is he's got a cap figure now at $37 million. You're going to take that on? I mean, $27 million salary plus the $10 million roster bonus. You're going to take that on for a backup quarterback? I'm kind of stunned that Atlanta did what it did by paying him the $10 million option. But it's a tough financial call, unless you're committing him to be your guy for the next year, year and a half, and maybe Minnesota does that. But, there's also a faction in Atlanta wants to keep him because maybe they're not sure Penix is really going to be the guy for a long term. Yeah, he had flashes at the end of the season. So that bears watching as to where he's going. I'm not so sure he's on the open market like Rodgers or Russell Wilson is.
We got a huge sports weekend coming up, Lee, where you're going to be at a massive day in the NHL tomorrow. And then, of course, March Madness continuing on. I guess by the way, just quick aside, we were hoping that we would see Canada playing in the final of this CONCACAF Nations League. They lost to the Mexicans last night. But, oh my God, Team USA losing at home to Panama. What a disaster. I mean, and I guess part of the reason why people think Canada got jobbed last night was that if it was Canada-Panama, there would have been like 500 people at SoFi Stadium for that championship game on the weekend. But USC Soccer has been in a not a very good spot for the last 4 or 5 years. What's the latest on this team after last night? I mean, I'm sure that is a big story amongst people that follow the game, the continued lack of success of the national team, and this time as a huge favorite losing on home soil.
Well, nobody showed up to play the game because this is in the middle of the Lakers playing a home game in March Madness and everything else going on with UCLA and all that. They had a bad night at the office. But they got a lot of injuries, a lot of nagging stuff, and there was no Christian Pulisic here. And a couple of the other young guys that they brought back from the European tours showed up injured. So it just wasn't a real good performance against Panama. And Mauricio Pochettino was very, very upset and kind of, I guess, preached to his players that this team has to be more than you just wearing the flag on the front of the uniform. They didn't run the system he wanted. Up until that game, they played really good soccer. Now, the flip side is once they have the complete roster back intact, led by Pulisic and Gio Reyna and some of the other young Americans, I think they're going to be really good going forward. So I just chalk it up to injuries and a bad night at the office against a roster that was put together at the last minute because they had so many people. And they haven't hardly practiced at all because everybody's off playing, in their European contracts with their clubs back over there. So, going towards World Cup, I think they're going to be okay. And I'll tell you what, Women's World Cup here in the States with Emma Hayes from Chelsea, pretty bleeping good. They're on the brink, I think, of really good things in what's supposed to be a rebuild year. So We're talking soccer. God,
Yeah.
we're
Hey,
talking
listen, that's the thing. I mean, you're the Renaissance man, a five-tool player, as they say. That's why, gang, head on over every day, LeeHacksawHamilton.com. Be the best 15 minutes of your day. And, of course, if you haven't already, make sure to go over on YouTube and give Hacksaw a sub starting usually shortly after WST during the week. Lee, have a great weekend, my friend. We'll look forward to talking to you soon.
Great to talk to you. Have a great sports weekend. Thanks, Hustler. And we'll talk to all your people Monday at 1:30 Pacific.
You got it. Right after WST, 3:30 our time. Get on over to Hacksaw. It said Lee's a footy guy. You love to see it. Lee's an everything guy. Come on. He just, as I said, the 5-tool player, more like about a 50-tool player when it comes to sports. Boring Sean Monahan in the chat says, how is this World Cup being hosted by Canada, USA, and Mexico going to work next year? Most of the games are in the United States. I believe Canada has 7 or somewhere between 7 and 9 games. I think Mexico's got a couple more. And then the rest are all in the United States. And when they pull the pools, I would imagine Canada will be in a pool that will play at least a couple games in Canada, Mexico as well. And there's a couple of playoff games that are already determined that will be in those other locations. And then as they get past the round of 16, I believe all the games are at some of the big stadiums in the United States. Yeah, and tough one for Canada last night. Gave up a first-minute goal, got absolutely jobbed on a penalty non-call that should have given them a penalty shot that's called in 99 to 100% of games on the planet. But as I said, CONCACAF, you can never be guaranteed of anything going on the up and up, and not sure that it was last night. Anyways, it's going to be Panama and Mexico in the final of that tournament. All right, last call for marbles. I think everyone's got them in, but we'll give you a minute or two. If you're just popping in at the top of the hour, 3 o'clock, last minute, we're going to get to that right away. But let me get to the Coolbet lines. And you know what? I'm not sure. Gitch, are you in chat? Are you here for marbles today? I have to give a big shout out to Sean Lishka, a WST legend. He fired me a message last night while we were doing our finishing up the Jet game. And he said, hit some juicy parlays tonight. It pays to listen to the lock shop, and fired it over. The Gitch banged out at Coolbet an 8-game parlay in the National Hockey League last night that went off at just about 127 to 1. Listen to these picks from last night. And it's even more amazing because of how much overtime there was and shootouts. He had the Panthers. He had the Caps. He had the Leafs against the Rangers, the Kings, Utah, Carolina. Oh, I think that was the 16 to 1 that he had. Yeah, sorry. This is the big one. Florida, Colorado, Washington, that huge comeback by the Calgary Flames, which was at plus 141. The Leafs were a dog against the Rangers. Utah, the Jets, and Tampa. A $5 bet paid $638. So, Gitch, I hope I see you on the weekend. You can get me a little brown jug for our guidance in that play. But that was an absolute beauty. And then for good measure, he also hit a 16 to 1 last night. So everything was coming up, Gitch. We hit our partner parlay last night. It was a very, very good night if you were with us in the lock shop. As far as what's going on tonight, not much. One game in the National Hockey League, but everyone's going to be locked into March Madness. The Blue Jackets can't score. They just finished up 4 straight games at home where they scored 1 goal. They were shut out 3 times, including last night, a 1-0 loss to the Panthers in OT. They are desperate. They're on the verge of falling out of that playoff race. Got to have it tonight. They're a slight underdog at minus 102. The Pittsburgh Penguins at minus 115. Of course, March Madness is well underway. Finishing up the first round today. Right now, Duke running away on Mount St. Mary's. Colorado State looking good. They're up 11 on Memphis. That's a 12-5 game. So Colorado State, despite being a slight favorite, was the 12 seed in that one. You got Vandy and St. Mary's. Some of the big teams going later on. 1 seed Florida, 28.5-point favorites. And Michigan State, 17.5-point favorite tonight against Bryant. If you do go to the combo cards, there's a few parlays up. I jumped on with this one with Jake. This is just of these 3 teams to win. Marquette, Connecticut, and Oregon got a nice boost to plus 203 on that one. If you like the Wildcats, Kentucky Wildcats minus 9.5, Arizona minus 13.5. That one's boosted to plus 230, and some other good ones. But listen, we dove into this one. Remis, you'll like this. We were just talking about how many 3-point games there are right now. Last night was crazy with overtime and shootouts. We've identified 2 for tomorrow. Rangers, Canucks, both teams needing points in opposite conferences. This can easily go to overtime. So we're going to take the draw there, and we're going to do the same thing with similar situations, Calgary and the Islanders. So we're going to take regulation draws in those games. That is boosted up to 19-1. So basically a $10 bet will pay $200 on that. So if you like that one, that's in the combo cards at the end. And then we picked for tomorrow, Minnesota to beat Buffalo, the Kings, best home team in the league, to break the Hurricanes' 8-game winning streak, and the Lightning to beat Utah. That one is a nice boost up to plus 583. But March Madness, NHL, and of course, both NHL and March Madness tomorrow, you'll have a free 30% profit boost to use on one of your bets. So if you're making a few, whichever your favorite one is, click on the green button. That's all you have to do. It'll add 30% to your win total. And of course, we got the UFC bet and get for you UFC people. I'm not even a UFC guy, but I usually take advantage of it. You make a $25 bet on any of the fights, and regardless of whether you win or lose, you get a free $25 bet on Monday. So to me, it's the biggest no-brainer on the board. All there for you at Coolbet. Check out today's Lock Shop over on YouTube on the Edmonton Sports Talk channel, or subscribe to the podcast. And use the promo code WST if you haven't played there before for a free 100% bonus on your first deposit up to $200. And make sure to check out the promotions tab for all the great promos that we've got going on right now at Coolbet. All right, we're gonna get to the the marbles in just a second, but let's get Remis back in here. And Remo, I saw the note you mentioned. We've got some imaging for the Grey Cup and the Grey Cup Festival.
Yeah, the countdown is on us to the Winnipeg 112th Grey Cup, CFL 112th Grey Cup here in Winnipeg, and the Grey Cup Festival. We had such a great time in Vancouver. Woo. And they got a lot to follow up. I know Wade Miller is certainly the guy to lead the charge, and they revealed the logo and imaging today that we're going to be seeing, until it is in November. And here it is. I guess they got the blue and the gold colors. They got some trees, a nice skyline. I have some complaints that they're kind of going with the same Grey Cup logo over the last couple of years, but I think that's a trend that you're seeing with the Stanley Cup logos, Super Bowl logos as well. They just kind of use the same one and change it, but I think this is pretty nice. And I didn't spring for the Grey Cup hat last year, Huss. I really wanted to get it with Vancouver, but now that it's here, I'm going to do it. I'll have to start saving now for all the great Grey Cup merch I'm going to buy.
Yeah, no, I think they did a great job on this. I mean, you've got the Grey Cup trophy right in the middle, the Grey Cup with that usual Grey Cup font, and then the blue and the gold with the Manitoba Wilderness there, and a really cool look for the Grey Cup Festival. So bring it on. Bring on the season. Well, heck, we haven't even got to the draft yet, so I guess we'll get to the CFL draft first. Then we can look ahead to training camps and kick off down at Princess Auto Stadium. Update, by the way, and just we did get Evdog to throw all the lines up early for tomorrow in the NHL, so you can't get there and get on it. The Kraken when the game opened, were plus 170 and the Oilers minus 200. Knowing now that both Draisaitl and McDavid are out, that number has dropped pretty big. Oilers minus 172, Kraken plus 145, and I wouldn't be surprised if that number continues to drop. Of course, that's the biggest news in the National Hockey League right now. The status of the Oilers' two superstars, Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid. Actually, one thing I should mention, I noticed that the Hart Trophy numbers... the Hart Trophy numbers actually have come off the board since earlier today. That probably has something to do with Draisaitl and his availability. But it did go from plus 200 for Hellebuck down to plus 160. And you do wonder, Remis, if all of a sudden Leon Draisaitl gets sat for a week or two, whether that might be a big boost to those of us with Hellebuck futures for the Hart Trophy.
Yeah, I was also going to say, like, Rocket Richard. I know he's got a pretty healthy lead, but I mean, they say week to week, or he could play through if it was a playoff game, but you never know how it's going to go. And you look at the goals. He does have, he's got 11 goal lead on Nylander, 12 on Kyle Connor. It's going to be tough. I mean, Mark Scheifele, man, imagine having one team having two players top 5 in goals, and that's the Winnipeg Jets with Kyle Connor.
One line
and Mark Scheifele. Yeah, pretty wild. What's going on there? And so yeah, I'm curious. I guess that does make sense why they would take it off the board if Draisaitl's injured. So something to keep an eye on moving forward.
Draisaitl 49 goals on the season. Nylander 38, Connor 37, Scheifele and Ovi at 35. And then Kyle Connor still top 5 in league scoring. McKinnon 105, Draisaitl 101, Kucherov 96, McDavid 90, and Kyle Connor number 86. And then you go on the other side to the goaltending leaders. Everything is Connor Hellebuck. Goals against average, save percentage, wins, shutouts, you name it. And speaking of wins, 7 more than Andrei Vasilevsky right now for number 1. First goalie in the league to get to 40. I wouldn't be surprised if he's the only goalie in the league to get to 40. Don't expect Hellebuck in the net Sunday afternoon for the Jets against the Buffalo Sabres. We expect it to be Eric Comrie. And then Hellebuck back in net for the battle of the top 2 teams. A game that could determine who wins that President's Trophy for those who celebrate. Tuesday night, Ovechkin and the Caps for their lone visit of the year during the regular season to Canada Life Center. All right, you know what time it is, folks. It is marbles time. The weekend is just about here, but it's not officially here until the marbles. It was great to see Tristan, Rivers Music, and Candace, who joined us last night for the second half of the game. Always great to see Tristan. And speaking of him and Candace, we can't get into the marbles before we drop a Friday Marbles theme song on WST to get the festivities underway. Let's do it.
It's Friday, another week of work's gone by. You deserve to treat yourself, maybe an ice cream cake or a bottle of rye. For the whole day, so lax you can't deny. Why use effort even for pleasure? Give life a try. It's time to do a marble race. No skill separated fast to words. Marble race. Just like marbles with the punctuation first. Marble race. Don't spam or you will suffer. All explain. Marble race. Into your mark before it's too late. Set go.
Right, marbles time on WST heading into the weekend. Jets at 100 points. Hellebuck with 40 wins. Scheifele and Connor in the top 5 goal scorers. Times are good right now, though we do wish Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl well. Hopefully we'll see those guys in that final regular season game. Game 81 of the year, Jets Oilers here in Winnipeg. 82 is the Ducks. I think that might be the game that Elias Salmonson, and as we spoke with Ken and maybe some other younger players, if they are going to do that, get into a game before things get going on that weekend. Remo, where are we going today, and how many marbles in the mix?
Okay, I'm closing it. First of all, there's some mixed reviews on Marbles Unplugged that we just had. Marbles, some people said not as into it. Some people wanted to get the lighters out. So you can't please everyone. I'm a big Unplugged guy. That's how this all started. I listened to a lot of like acoustic of like rock bands or something. And I was like, Tristan, can you do an acoustic marble race? And then he just went nuts and did like 15 versions.
It was the best. It was the best. And I'm saying, hey, it's Dr. Terry approved. Shout out to Terry. That's the he had a top 10 performance last week while elbow deep in one of his clients' grills. That's what we call multitasking, and that's what you need to do. As long as you get your marble in, you can always go back and check out YouTube after you finish what you're doing to see how you did. Of course, we are playing for a WST hoodie today. Shout out to Shipman Associates for helping us out with those. I know Transcona Logan actually is coming by right afterwards today to grab his hoodie from last week or the week after. So what's the so do we have the do we have the course today?
We got 288 marbles in.
Perfect.
Going to put you in?
Definitely, please throw me in all caps if you don't mind.
Sounds good. I'll put you in all cap.
Anyone else that we need to put in?
I think we can just go with the show here.
Yeah, I think there's nothing earth shaking. We gave Hildebrand and Filowich their marbles last week. They're out now, so there's no new players on the Jets. So yeah, we just roll in with what we've got today. What course are you cooking up for us?
On Matt, I've actually got a really good course. It's called
Beautiful.
I think it's like based on Minecraft or something.
Cool.
Not 100%. Just to throw in, I showed it to the U of M Bisons women's volleyball champion. Maybe we should throw in Julia Arnold and Katrina Bentley, who were on the show earlier this week on Tuesday, talking about what a great season, what season they had.
Yeah, put in Katrina.
Yeah.
Put in Julia Arnold, and we should put in Rhea Syrinx too, because what that young woman did, and it sort of lost in the great team success. She went back to back as the Canadian Youth Sports Player of the Year. I was reading about it last night. I think it's only been done 7 or 8 times in the history of university volleyball, and the impact that she's had on that program, in addition to the incredible stars around her. She was the MVP of the tournament as well. So yes, we will definitely do that. So good luck to them. Some more great youth sports action actually coming up. You got the Nationals out in Brandon. There's basketball going on. So and by the way, we should also give a shout out to Chris Voth. Man, what a run for Voth since he joined us on the program a couple weeks ago. First, he won Coach of the Year for Canada West, and then he was announced as the Coach of the Year for all of youth sports. So just an amazing just year for the Westmen overall. So Chris Voth gets Coach of the Year. Easton Dick is the Rookie of the Year for youth sports with the Westmen, and first team All-Canadian Isaiah Olfert. So shout out to the Westmen for their run. The National Youth Sports Banquet went down earlier this week, and again, wishing the Westmen luck in the Nationals. All right, I'm looking forward to this course, Remo. Minecraft theme.
Yeah.
Big game with the kids.
Yeah, I'm deciding if I should get my son into Minecraft. I'm not sure.
You might get addicted right away.
Yeah, well, we started up on Pokemon Go. I told you he was asking for a 24/7, so we had to put a limit on that.
At least with Pokemon Go, you have to go out and walk around to do it.
I use it to convince him to do laps when we were outdoor skating. I was like, if you do more laps, we can hatch our egg and get more Pokemon. He's like, yeah. Never wanted to skate more in his life. And when we did Pokemon,
I'm gonna turn him into McDavid, all for Pokemons.
Yeah, it was great. One thing I don't know if we mentioned, people were asking us to touch on it, how Luke, the Jets are off, they were flying home, but the Jets let Luke Shen go back to Nashville to be with his family. He was traded twice around the deadline. Don't think a lot of teams would do that. Just a really nice gesture there by the Jets. There was one person who, I don't know if they were trolling Mike McIntyre.
To Mike.
I don't know if they were trolling him or not, but Mike responded on Twitter and X saying, sorry, what was saying?
Surely you jest.
The guy goes, this is a playoff race. What is this? We're trying to win the cup. Letting him go see his family. Gotta have your focus on one thing, the Stanley Cup championship. How dare they let him go see his family? That's what someone tweeted.
With a month left in the regular season and a day off today. So he went out to Nashville. He will be in the lineup on Sunday afternoon. Don't worry. Listen, I think that it's one of those things that the Jets, behind the scenes have worked very, very hard to do since 2011. It's give their players, a world-class atmosphere, up with the standards of the best teams in the National Hockey League, treat them well, treat their families well. It's obviously paying dividends with the amount of guys they've gotten to hang around here and sign extensions, and they'll be needing that for some key extensions next offseason as well. All right, well, let's get this sucker up and get rolling.
Okay, let me find this track and load all the names in. Where is it? Okay, it was called Craftysteve-Mine. This was a good one. It was cool. Beautiful.
We're gonna do it. By the way, I'm just seeing there's some video game talk in. I guess more video games for kids. I don't know about the kids' video games, but as I mentioned, Remis and I are now on PGA 2K25 on Xbox. Fire us a tweet if anyone's swinging it on PGA 2K25. There's no Jet games for the next couple days. I have a feeling I might have some availability to go toe-to-toe with some listeners. So you know where to get at me, at Hustlerama on X, on Insta. X is way better to get at me, though. And I'm actually Hustlerama on Xbox as well. All right, let's do this. Craftysteve-Mine, a Minecraft-themed track. We've never done it before. We've got almost 300 marbles in. It's been a great week. Thanks again to everyone that joined us last night at Boston Pizza. Great to see you all. Shout out to Little Brown Jug and BP for taking care of the crew. And next Friday, sold out after adding additional seats. Cannot wait to see you all for the Jets-Devils game. And we look to run the table. 2-0 in watch parties, 5-0 in Section 316. We're going to make it 6 next week. Fingers crossed. But the weekend is here. Not until the marbles are dropped and we crown a weekly champion. Let's do this. Good luck to everyone. And we are off on Craftysteve-Mine.
I just got to say, I looked through a lot of tracks until I found this one. I was like, yes, this is the one.
This is cool. We always like these interesting starts. It looked like Vine got a little bit of a head start on a few people. So the big question is who's going to come out first and whether they're going left or right. Rob Wright at the leader of the way. Caitlin Lishka. Is that Caitlin? Is that L-I-S-K-A? The same thing?
No, Litke.
Oh, Litke. Okay, sorry. I thought that might have been a Gitch relative. Who do we got here? We've got Caitlin Litke is right near the top. Val L's in the mix. Benjamin, but yes, Caitlin, first place. Benjamin, is that Gann?
Yeah.
Benjamin Gann. Jess, also looking good. Julia Arnold. Oh, Jess gets thrown up. Oh, Jess just got eliminated. Over the top rope. There are some. Steiner just got popped too. Julia Arnold, Bison Star, looking good. Candace Jane making a big mix. Oh, Remis, this is a great track. Bookmark this one. We may have to come back to this one at some point. We've got Dan Fan Roberts in the mix, but Candace Jane, who made her triumphant return to the WST crew and community yesterday, was great to see. But Rick Buck with a very smooth move just took over first place. Candace, Rick, going back and forth with each other through this one. Now here comes Rick Buck. Great camera work by the maestro of the marbles, Remis, getting some great shots on all of this. But it's Rick in first place. We've got another obstacle coming up here. Can Candace chase? We've got a couple more people sort of entering in. We see Dan Fan Roberts in there, Cruiser as well. Oh, and Rhea Surinks. Man, a couple of the volleyball girls kicking some ass in marbles just like they do on the court. But Rick Buck is first. Rick gets around it. All right, we're very close. Is Rick? Oh, Rick.
Oh.
Could it be Candace Jane? This is serious. Candace is going to get away. Can anyone catch her? Candace Jane, WST legend, joined us last night and wins today's marble race. And how about this for winners, dude? The Bison women finished third and fifth. We put in 3 marbles. There was almost 300. Julia Arnold gets third. Rhea Surinks gets fifth.
Been that week for the U of M Bisons.
All they do
women's
is win.
Volleyball nationals.
Great course. You were not kidding. This one came as advertised.
Man, Rick Buck just didn't have the speed to get up that lip at the end there. That was his race.
It really was. Oh, and there's Les Thompson with the top 10 performance. Les was out last night. Just a who's who of the WST chat last night. Although BA, there was rumors that BA was going to join us. He did not. That was disappointing. I know Larry said they live right by each other, same neighborhood. They thought they might bump into each other. But Dallas was a big winner at the end. He won one of the prizes from Little Brown Jug. Alex, of course, Stetsky was one of the pick a player winners. Hasbeek won as well. Greg from Royal Sports. So it was great. Oh, I see Coach Mike says Chris Voth helps our Windman practices once a week. Oh man, he's the best. He was a player when I was working at the U of M. Always really fun to deal with. Had a great professional career, and now what a debut season as the head coach for the Westman. All right, heading down this list, you can see where you finished up. There's CFL 60 OG, Caitlin. There's Jen Cool, Tucker, Dale Berza, Ken 007, Bravo Bry, our buddy, Tristan Rivers Music, Donnie O, Big Daddy Brent. Still looking for me here. Oh, there's Hustler. What was I? 145. Okay. Now, hopefully the Bozeman's coming up afterwards. There's Todd Fertani. There's Coachy. T. Will. Ishaboy. Lucas Maciel. What's up, Lucas? MVP. Klassen. Northside Sandwich. Spency 5 Centsy. Some of the ES tiers. And then, Big Uke got thrown over the top rope. Jerry Beluda. Oh, Bozeman got bounced. Darren Chalice sits beside me in 206 when I'm down there. I'm going to be there for Tuesday against the Washington Capitals. But there's everybody else that got whacked and were not able to complete the race. So our winner, again, was Candace. We know Candace. Candace knows where to get at us. Candace, holler, and we'll set you up with a hoodie and pop by for you at some point that is convenient to you. Sort of a weird, we had that game last night, that great event, Remis. It is strange to go Friday and Saturday without a game.
It's kind of nice for the team that they got a couple days off. It is weird that there's one game tonight. I don't know, I guess making the playoff races more important. You have designated days of games. Too bad the game tonight is what, Columbus and Pittsburgh?
Big game for Columbus. Can they score goals?
Sure, big game. Yeah, I guess it's Crosby. All right, that's fine. But yeah, take a night off and enjoy all the games tomorrow, and then Sunday afternoon, a big one here for the. Maybe not a big one, but it's a game. The Jets and the Sabres. I mean, the Sabres scoring on their own net, on a delayed power play in the final minute. On the broadcast, Rob Ray's like, just give them the puck. Just give it up. Get the whistle. Get the power play at the middle left. And they put it in their own net. Yikes.
That was a huge yikes. And the Sabres will be playing on the second end of back-to-backs in 3 and 4 because they're in Minnesota taking on the Wild tomorrow afternoon. And then here in Winnipeg, 2 p.m. puck drop for Buffalo and Winnipeg. You know, I wanted to actually talk Buffalo. If you've ever heard the After the Whistle podcast with Craig Rivet and Andrew Peters.
Yeah.
A couple of my friends are fans of it, so I'll check it out occasionally. And I mean, listen to those guys struggle with just talking about this team through the series, through the season has been. It makes you feel that much more comfortable or thankful for what we talk about here every day with our team, because it is ugly and it has just been an absolute mess moving forward. But hey, Tage Thompson is looking good. 34 goals on the season. He is at least getting some good results. So Buffalo on Tuesday, and then we'll have a big show on Monday, recapping the weekend and looking ahead to a battle of the number 1 and 2 teams in the National Hockey League, regardless of what happens over the next few days. No one's catching either Winnipeg or Washington. So a bit of a President's Cup battle, if you will, on Tuesday. But first things first, Sunday afternoon, Jets and Buffalo. And on Monday, we'll recap it all, a few big stories from the local scene as well, and the latest in the playoff races in the National Hockey League. That's going to do it for us today and this week. Thanks again for everyone that joined us last night. We'll look forward to seeing many of you next Friday for the Jets and Devils as we look to go 6-0 in the WST section. Thanks to Hacksaw. Great stuff with EJ Hradek. Appreciate him jumping on, and of course, Ken Wiebe as well. Folks, have yourself a wonderful weekend. Enjoy the game on Sunday afternoon, and we'll look forward to catching you Monday, 1 p.m. live on YouTube, and a little later on in your afternoon on the podcast for Winnipeg Sports Talk. Have a good one, gang.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home! Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.